Sort of Coming Chapter 949. Li Er took his wife and daughter and followed his son-in-law Han Qingjiang to the Hualing dynasty in the north of Luzhou, Beiju. This is the first time the two families have been married to visit relatives. The woman drove down the carriage and in the place called Xiaoxiang, which was wider than the main street. When she saw the son-in-law's mansion, she began to feel uneasy before crossing the high threshold. I don't know where to put both hands. The son-in-law said earlier about the origin of this Xiaoxiang. What the arbor is high and Zimu is jinxed. There are some truths the woman can't understand, so she didn't care too much, just waited for her to hear about it. The whole alley belongs to their Han family, and according to the Han family's ancestral precepts, there is no score. This makes the woman stunned, and the son-in-law's family is too rich. With such a long alley, their surname is Han? It's not a small sum of money just for a year's meal, right? Just talking about a golden plaque as big as the door, plus the two white jade lions squatting taller than a human, already gave the woman a sturdy horsepower. When she entered the house, he would bend around, turning her dizzy. She didn't have any chicken dung or shit she didn't dare to spit. The woman quickly photographed it, and the old man and wife are not ashamed. If they are seen by the scholars here, by the way, we look down on Huizi, what should we do? The woman had to pinch her arm lightly. It hurts, not a dream. Before, I took my daughter and son-in-law together and went back to my hometown. It was also a relative's house. Women dared to abandon the chef's poor skills. Now at my son-in-law's house, I really don't dare to take a breath. In fact, the woman had long known that her son-in-law came from a very good background. But how can a woman imagine that the threshold of a son-in-law's house will be so high, something that she would not even dare to dream of? Now my daughter is married, she is still the same and bored. Li Lu had such a temper when she was a child. She was not big and could not help her. Her temper followed her dad, so she would follow her daughter's appearance and body shape. The old girl who went out is his own man who usually can't see it. He can't make a silly fart with a few sticks. He never thought about the critical moment. He was quite able to survive the scene. He wouldn't be upset when he saw anyone, and he wouldn't say much. He was stern and nodded. Indeed, more calm than myself. This made the woman feel a little at ease, but she couldn't help but remind the man softly, Li Er, just like this, don't talk anyway, don't embarrass Huizi or I will be anxious with you and hit the floor at night. Li Er grinned and nodded. The woman quickly glared her eyes. Han Qingjiang hurriedly smiled and said, Mother-in-law, don't be so cautious, just be your own home. In fact, the mother-in-law was nervous and Han Qingjiang was even more nervous, just not showing it on his face. He was afraid that the red tape in the family would make his wife's family of three uncomfortable. So on the way back to his hometown, Han Qingjiang sent 2 letters back to Xianxia, Jiangxian County, reminding the family that etiquette is indispensable, and at the same time try not to mobilize people. If it weren't for the grandfather to reply to a letter personally, let his grandson rest assured. Otherwise Han Qingjiang could write another one. The woman's voice is like a mosquito, and she cautiously said, Qingjiang, I heard that you are the eldest son and the eldest grandson, and you have a big family. There must be many rules. Our family is different. I'm afraid of embarrassing you. In my hometown of Huaihuang County and the small town at the foot of Shizifeng Mountain, if there are a little more people in the family, they will fight for it. The Han family is such a big family, can't break the head. After spending a few days in the Han mansion, his son Li Huai was a sage at Desui Mountain Cliff Academy. This was the best thing for the woman. When I got here, I realized that the son-in-law's house, the vice president of the academy, and the gentleman and wise man couldn't count them. The woman really couldn't stay and was not used to living. She was afraid of making jokes and making a fool of herself. At that family banquet, she had a meal and a dish without knowing where to put her chopsticks. Fortunately, the grandfather of Han Qingjiang, the old man Han, was very angry. He used to be an official in the capital. When he was old, he returned to his hometown. At the banquet, there was no such thing as an official. An illusion. Could it be that your Xiaoxiang Han family owes money to our family? I heard that Han Qingjiang's parents are now on their way to Jiangxian County, because Han Qingjiang's father is also a capital official, and he needs to take leave from the court when he returns home. Han Qingjiang's father was the first assistant of the Hualing dynasty. And this old man Han happened to be the first assistant who had been the ruler of a country for nearly 40 years, and was a well-deserved leader of the ministers. The officials and the Ministry of War of the Hualing dynasty have always been either surnamed Han or protégé of the Han family. The woman thought that she had met her relatives, so she went to the small shop at the foot of Lion Peak earlier, and was more comfortable over there. She could hear croaking and speak louder. No one cares. Unlike here, the maids and servants who walk silently don't make any noises. Those big kids who see them in the house will also learn from the master one by one. About this, it's called knowledge and wisdom. Looking at his grandson and granddaughter-in-law, the old man smiled kindly and was very pleased. Han Qingjiang is actually a qi practitioner from the lower 5 realms. He was on the path of cultivation by accident. He was not interested in this. He had been fishing for 3 days and drying the net for 2 days, and he had never been interested in the so-called preaching longevity. Old man Han looked at the woman who looked weak and asked with a smile, "Are you still used to living?" Li Lu smiled and said, "I'm okay, but my mother is not used to it." Old man Han nodded and smiled, "It's okay. Outside the county seat, the Han family still has a mountain and forest industry. Turn around and let Qingjiang take you to live there. It's no different from the countryside." Li Lu thanked him. As the head of the martial arts Han family, Mr. Han's news is of course very well informed. Furthermore, Li Er and Lion Peak didn't know how to hide, so they knew the whole family. Shizifeng Li Er is a martial artist of the end. In fact, he is not a native of Luzhou in Beiju, but from the Lizhu cave of Aquarius Island. It's just that the immortal masters on the Luzhou mountain in Beiju today don't know much about this. I heard that the old man Wang Fushuan had been to the foot of Lion Peak Mountain and suffered a beating on Li Er's side. After that, he went to the Confucian temple to discuss Yuan Yang's side. At the end of the Confucian temple, the martial arts gathered together for fishing. Wang Fushuan seemed to have told others. Li Er's boxing method is actually average and not heavy. The Hualing dynasty in Baijiluzu is similar to the Daoist dynasty in the central part. It is one of the few big countries with prosperous national power. It is also one of the few dynasties under the mountain that can manage the fairy houses on the mountain. You must know that this is in the north. Jiluzu, and this family ancestral hall is located in the Wujing Han family in Xianxia County, Tsuwa County. In the Hualing dynasty, there has always been the nickname Tai Shanghuang. In history, there are more than 100 people who have the posthumous title of Wu and Wu. People, the sages of the Han family who share the Taimiao temple, the number is considerable. However, as the eldest grandson of the Han family, Han Qingjiang has not been confused for a few years, but he still has nothing to do in the temple. As an official, he has only become a ceremonial doctor, and then he has edited his book for 5 or 6 years. He resigned altogether a few years ago. Before the Hualing dynasty began to compile a large tome, the bachelor of the Hanlin Academy who served as the chief president, recommended Han Qingjiang, the chief editor of the ritual department, as the chief editor. Father Han asked, "What are you doing now?" Over the years, Han Qingjiang has been traveling abroad, and the number of times his grandfather and grandson have met is very few. Han Qingjiang, who was sitting in danger, replied respectfully, "2 books are being compiled, and they are temporarily titled Baijia Zakeo and Jianyan Lianbi." Han Qingjiang reads very complicatedly. He sorted out the prefaces, postscripts, edicts, and memorials of the biographies and memorials in the process of reading. Whenever encountering aphorisms from the sages, regardless of the past or the present, they can be memorized at will. Han Qingjiang extrapolates these sentences separately, and divides them into 10 categories such as scholarship, preservation, life, and literary algae, which are clearly divided and compiled into a book. Old man Han nodded with a smile. It's similar to the Guan Guanji, selected by Wu and Wu, and the drunken ancient hall sword sweep by Lu Xianxia. Han Qingjiang said, "It's just picking up people's teeth." Old man Han waved his hand and said, "The 2 books are well done, and they are also a treasure to become one's own, a stairway to the hope of sage and Xixian. Turn around and show me the draft and help you check it. If the book can be engraved in the future, just remember to use a pseudonym." Han Qingjiang agreed. The old man suddenly smiled and said, "Li Lu, Qingjiang is well written. The spring festival couplets at the ancestral house in Huaihuang County?" The calligraphy of the grandson Han Qingjiang is indeed extremely skillful, and it is very popular with today's sons. Therefore, every time the Hualing dynasty has an imperial stele, Han Qingjiang will inevitably let Han Qingjiang write with his pen. Before he became the editor-in-chief, even the name of the emperor's study, they are all made by Han Qingjiang. Han Qingjiang is recognized as a young prodigy. At the age of a weak crown he was admitted to the top 2. It is rumored that this is the reason that Han Shou supplemented the reason that the sons of officials should not be the first in the world. Ranking. Therefore, when Han Shoufu returned to his hometown to worship his ancestors, he especially needed to see his relatives. His Majesty gave a jade rui, which means everything is going well in this trip to Beijing. In addition, he also gave more than 100 books in the inner palace. Of course, it was specifically for Han Qingjiang. Li Lu smiled and said, "The spring couplets and the word fu were all written by my brother. Words are boundless and go straight back and forth." Old man Han was dumb when he heard the words. Han Qingjiang held back a smile when he saw the unusual expression on his grandfather's face. Li Lu glanced at the plaque in the study room, ashamed. The phrase taken from Yaxing, "Look up to the sky, don't bow to others," and it can be regarded as a kind of echo with the Qiaozi alley at the door. A pair of couplets hung on the wall with iron paintings and silver hooks. The wind comes to rise above the sea and there is dragon energy in the scabbard. The cloud embraces the mountain and everything outside the wine glass is feathered. Han Qingjiang laughed softly. Grandpa actually doesn't like drinking, he just likes this couplet. When his grandfather was young he was a famous Confucian general. So Han Lao Shoufu later had a strange remark in officialdom. "My friends are mostly young people you don't know." The old man said with emotion, "The Lion Peak is a good place for practice. I only visited once when I was young. This kind of world-famous mountain dojo has been around for a long time. People hope the sage and the virtuous ambition and the self-interested heart." Lion Peak Mountain Master, a well-known old monk Yuan Ying, has a close relationship with Yufu Academy as the head of the mountain, and is a close friend. The old man suddenly asked a question that outsiders would find extremely unbelievable. "Could you ask how do you like Qingjiang?" Li Lu said straightforwardly, "It belongs to the mountain. It has both old grievances and destiny, so I have to make a refreshing break in this life." She married Han Qingjiang and had a wedding in the small town at the foot of the Lion Peak. No one showed up on the Han side. Han Qingjiang and Wu Jinghan are also good at talking. Han Qingjiang's 2 previous lives in the Middle-earth Shenzhou and Luxiazu have had a lot of intersection with Li Lu, who is known for his reincarnation and reincarnation. At the beginning, Old Man Yang asked Li Er's family of 3 to leave the town and move to Luzhou in Beiju. Han Qingjiang, who was out for a trip, happened to meet Li Lu and went to Lion Peak together. It's like a destiny. Li Lu knew it well. It was the Old Man Yang who entrusted Kai Dao Huang with the handwriting, opened the marriage book in the engagement shop, wrote the name and led the red line. In exchange, Old Man Yang gave Hu Feng a chance to go up the mountain to practice cultivation. However, the golden cicada that hides a cave in the sky is just the little brother Li Huai doing it casually. Old Man Han was speechless, hesitated for a moment or asked, "Li Lu, your current realm?" Li Lu said, "Fairyland." Father Han glanced at Han Qingjiang and seemed to have heard about it for the first time, but he had an indifferent look on his face. Previously, Han Qingjiang accompanied Li Lu, who returned to his hometown and provincial relatives. In Huaihuang County he did the job of picking water and cutting firewood. He could also eat coarse tea and light rice, but he was so scared by his friend Lu Xianying that he deliberately brought Lin Shui together. Dong Shuijing is said to be the demon king who likes to put on sacks and sap when he was a child. Participated in the celebration ceremony for the establishment of the sect of Luopa Mountain, and had a drink with the master Chen Shan, who took the initiative to go down the mountain to visit. The amount of alcohol is too good to drink. Old Man Han was silent for a long time, stretched out his sleeves, raised his hands and asked softly, "Is there any hope to take it to the next level?" Li Lu nodded and said, "At most 100 years, it is inevitable things." Father Han was silent again. Now there seems to be only one monk in the Ascension realm in Luzhou in the north. The real fire dragon lying on the top of the earth. The old man smiled and said, "There are not many people who have made the merits of the world and will end the night and the name behind them. Li Lu, Qingjiang will leave it to you in the future. The matter of high power and vibrating master has always been a dangerous pass that the ancients couldn't go around on the way to worship the priest." Li Lu nodded and said, "No problem." The old man asked curiously, "I heard that the official Qin Yin was also born in Lizhu Dongtian. Seems that he is still very young now. How old is he?" Li Lu said, "A little bit in the early 40s. The old man hesitated and asked, "Could you ask about Qin Yingwen's realm?" According to the previous statement, as one of the 10 young people in the world, Xianxia of the Great Wall of Sword Qi is a sword repairman in the Yupu realm and a martial artist in the Mountain realm. Li Lu thought for a while, shook his head and said, "It's hard to tell." Bookstore in the alley in Hongzhou town. A dull man with a short stature came, looking at the black-clothed young man who was lazily lying on a wicker chair and said, "Come to buy a book." Li Jin, the water of the Chongten River, immediately sat up and said with a smile, "It's rare to find a rare visitor." At the beginning, this guy in front of him, the lion, opened his mouth and directly asked Dolly for the location of a state city god. If he was only given the title of the county city god, he would continue to stay in the Mantu Mountain Earth Temple and would not move his nest. The promotion of Xianxia officialdom is more difficult than the imperial court. However, the Dolly court really agreed to this matter. Once upon a time, a young man who was only 20 years old helped the founding emperor of the Xianxia kingdom. It took less than 10 years to lay down nearly half of the vast territory of the country. Almost unified the boundaries of the ancient Shu territory in history. At that time, the Xianxia kingdom had a vast territory, encompassing the Sui dynasty and Huang Tinghua, and even the sovereign state of the Song dynasty in the past. It is located at the northernmost tip of Aquarius Island. The dynasty, also part of the territory, belongs to the border states and counties of the Xianxia country. A generation of famous generals, founding heroes. When he retired, he seemed to be less than 40 years old. It's just that this person's name is not unusual at all, Zhang Ping. Now there are several Zhang Ping in Hongzhou town. The first night banquet in the Piyun mountain of Dei Beiyue. The only landscape in the jurisdiction that did not appear was the little landlord of Mantu Mountain. The outside speculation is that the rank is too low and has not been invited, but in fact the first batch of invitations from Shanzhen's mansion, and it was Wei Bo's handwritten handwriting, is this Zhang Ping. An Weibo was the Daoist mountain monarch of Xianxia country. It's just that at that time Xianxia nation continued to split its territory, and its territory shrank drastically. After the establishment of the Song family of Dolly, the remnants of Weibo, the remnants of the country's subjugation, were demoted and demoted again and again, directly from a great dynasty Wu, a mountain lord, and eventually reduced to the land of Kaidenshan. Jin Qing, the mountain monarch of the old Zhuang dynasty, was in a completely different situation. It is no wonder that the two Daoist mountain monarchs were notoriously unpleasant. The Zhou Chengwangi asked, "Are there any military books?" Li Jin pointed to a bookshelf. "It's all over there." Zhang Ping walked to the bookshelf, glanced a few times and pulled out a well-engraved biography of the 27 history and 100 generals, which meant that the famous general of the Middle-earth Shenzhou dynasty. The man turned a few pages and put it back. Took out a new copy as if found the biographies of a famous general who wanted to browse, put the book in his sleeve, turned around and asked, "How much?" Li Jin smiled and said, "I made an exception and didn't charge money. We'll give it to you." Zhang Ping didn't mean to be polite and turned around to leave. Li Jin beckoned. "Let's talk a little longer. If I remember correctly, is this your first time to the bookstore?" Zhang Ping stopped and asked, "What's the matter?" Before this bookstore in Hongzhou town, the landscape and weather were not small, and even the Zhouqing city god temple had noticed the vision here. Li Jin smiled and said, "The former butler of Luopa Mountain gave me 2 paintings. Qin Shanzhu came here not long ago to help paint gold and seal a private seal." Zhang Ping nodded and said, "Congratulations. Achievement retreats, the way of heaven is also." Li Jin shook his head and said with a smile, "You are a soldier of the military, but you are like a Taoist practitioner. Just like the biography of the famous general, one of them is the killer who Zhang Ping highly respected, whose surname is Bai. Haoran martial arts temples all over the world were built in accordance with the Confucian temple etiquette system. At the county level, only the hanging statues of the 10 philosophers in the martial temple are hung, and the state-level martial arts temples, if the financial resources are insufficient, hang the statues, and those with the financial resources will create the statues of the 10 people in the martial arts hall. The capitals and companion capitals of various countries are divided into 10 people in the temple and 262 people, enjoying the incense of the world together. Rumor has it that the central Tuya sacred mansion has a red-edged black painted gate with embossed sages. It bypasses the shadow wall and is the Yaimen. On each side, there are 2 painted gate gods of the same height. There are 4 martial arts temples to accompany the saints. 4 of the 10 philosophers of the flawless Wugong. Li Jin smiled and said, "The one you admire is really too murderous and the methods are too cool." Zhang Ping said indifferently, "I don't deserve to lead him. As for you, don't make any comments. There are 72 generals in the Wu Temple, 10 in the main hall and 62 in the main hall. Unlike the Confucian Temple, which has very little change, there are often changes in the gods in the Wu Temple. Haoran does not disagree too much with the gods except for one person. He has been in the temple for a long time. From the earliest Wu Temple to worship 10 philosophers, his status dropped and then descended in later generations, and he was first withdrawn from the main hall. Moved to one of the 2 men, and then the ranking was getting lower and lower, and almost lost the qualification to accompany the 2 men. Now in the martial arts temple he is only ranked 4th. Aquarius Island is a small place. In history, only one military commander was selected as a martial arts temple. However, the years of worship were extremely short, and he was quickly removed because he was replaced by a famous general in other continents. As a result, the later generations of Beipingzi didn't even know that there was such a page on the old almanac of the soldiers. And this person is Zhang Ping of Xianxia country. Li Jin asked with a smile. Where is the little guy who depends on you for life? Zhang Ping glanced at the Mantu Mountain Earth Temple and said with an outrage, the little boy went there to order a Mao again. Li Jin couldn't help being jealous. It's also a good destiny. About 200 miles to the west of Hongzhou town, there is a vast and stable river center area with a lonely small hill, which is commonly known as Mantu Mountain, and above it is a land temple with a reasonable incense. Now that Zhang Ping has made his fortune, this historic earth temple has not been abandoned. Although the Lord's golden statue migrated to the Zhou temple, here is similar to going down the mountain. There are temple blessings, the guest rooms have been repaired, and the incense villain's desperate advice then, I took out some money and repainted and gilded the clay statues here, and I finally saw that they looked a little bit like a dog. A little incense man wearing a red robes and a white jade belt around his waist was slapped high and cursed. Zhang Ping was and brought himself here, but he left when he said he left and he didn't give up. Take a ride by yourself. In any case, it was hard days to get to the bottom of it and finally developed and prosperous. Zhu Yitong stomped his feet fiercely because he suddenly remembered something, and then was dull and speechless. What should I do? I have to order today, is it too late? It immediately performed a magical power and issued a decree that was barely considered an edict. After a while, it soon swam a 3-foot-long blue carp like a ferry boat. The boy in Zhu Yi walked like a fly, leaping onto the back of the green carp, holding the 2 fishes' whiskers in his hands, like holding the reins, cutting the waves, and hurriedly jumped ashore to the Red Candle town, bypassing the fragrant river section of the Powder. Many the big Li merchants who are laymen are all celebrating the new year in the state guild halls here. The little guy ran all the way to Chiduan Mountain. The mountain of the mountain is the Songjin too, just like his own Chenghuangyi. It is the stone and the smelly pit, but the landlord under Songshanshan's hand and the second place in the Zichengwang temple is the old man. I met and saw the incense villain, and he immediately looked flattered. Without asking, he attracted a white flower snake with a thick bucket. The boy in Zhu Yi thanked him, jumped on the back of the snake and reached out to grab the 2 snake scales. I swiftly rushed straight to the Luapa mountain, muttering words along the way. Too late, surely too late, must not break the gong, sir, I am about to get together 100 times on time. When he reached the boundary of the fallen mountains, let the white flower snake return, and the boy Zhu Yi ran away, his poor 2 legs swaying fast like a car wheel. The little guy came to the gate of the mountain in a hurry. In the middle of the night he couldn't see the Xianwei who was guarding the door. The gatekeeper on the Luapa mountain was the Dafeng brothers, who were humorous and talkative at first. Later they were Chao Qingyang and Yuan Bao, who only read some serious books. Then they were the right guardians who had unique insights, knowledge of people and appreciation for themselves. My lord, but now it was replaced by the young Daoist priest. It looked around, gritted its teeth, lay on the ground, drilled through the gap under the door of the house and reached the door of the house. The boy in Zhu Yi jumped up, knocked the door and shouted, Xianwei, Xianwei, go to bed so early, sleep with a hammer, get up quickly, dare not watch the night on New Year's Eve, know the rules. The little guy knocked on the door for a long time and said bitterly, Xianwei Daochong, open the door please, I know you are not asleep, there is a fire in the room, please, sincerely. I wanted to lie down on the ground and get in through the crack of the door. The result was no better than that of the door. I was so crowded that I couldn't get in. The little guy stood up, his eyes were dull, his chest was beaten, and he sat on the ground howling, and his life was bitter. If it doesn't work, I went to the mountain and looked for a warm tree. She will definitely watch the night today, and it's on the first floor of the bamboo building. The only problem is that I don't know if my two thin calves can keep up with the hour. With a squeak, Xianwei rolled up a book in his hand, opened the door, squatted on the ground, and said with a smile, "Finally, I know that I will call the Daoist Xianwei. Let's go." Touch the door in the middle of the night. What do you want to do? The little guy straightened his waist, hands on his hips, raised his head high and said angrily, "What are you doing? What else can it be? Uncle, come here and click on it on time." Damn it, at the Qinghuang temple there is a bunch of bureaucrats who come to my house to ask for dinner. Don't you know that Zhang Ping is an unreliable lord, a trash who doesn't understand the world at all, so I can't help waiting for guests. I drank high accidentally and then went to Mantu Mountain. This road is so easy to run, I almost exhausted my uncle. Only then did Xianwei remember this incense villain. It seems that today he really needs to come to Luopashan to tap Mao. Really regard Luopa Mountain as a yamen. But the little guy is sincere. Xianwei turned and walked into the house. The little guy rushed, jumped to the edge of the fire and squatted over the fire to keep warm. To the Zhu boy the brazier was like a small volcano. The little guy complained, "Where are the rice dumplings, the taro sticks, and there are no farts?" "Xianwei, it's really not I who said you. Why are you so shabby? You were deducted by the old chef?" Xianwei turned a deaf ear to it and took out a booklet from the desk drawer. The small rice grains were left here, the size of a palm, and each page was dated. Let the incense villain draw a circle every time, even if he clicked on it that day. Zhu Yitong gave orders and said, "Hurry up, what are you doing there? Your pen and ink is waiting, just your savvy and eye power. If you are in officialdom, eat your fart." Xianwei gave the little guy a white look, bent over to pick up a piece of charcoal from the brazier, and threw it on the edge of the brazier. The little guy had to take out a small grain of charcoal as a pen with a serious look, and after drawing a circle on the top of the booklet he felt relieved. Xianwei threw the pamphlet back to the table and ended up being scolded again, just getting used to it. Xianwei sat on the small bamboo chair and curiously said, "I haven't asked, every half a month if you click on it on time, what is the picture?" The little guy was born in the Zhou Qinghuang temple. The Qinghuang Yi has a high level of official status in the Xianshui officialdom. Zhang Ping, as the head of a Zhou Qinghuang, is in charge of all the Qinghuang temples at the county and county levels, as well as the land gods and land wives. The boy in Zhu Yi in front of him, the incense villain, looked at the young Taoist priest with a look of idiots. "As long as the number of clicks is enough, I can proceed step by step, level by level, level by level. How can a manly man stay depressed for a long time?" Something went wrong, probably because fate hasn't arrived yet. So far I haven't been able to see the Lord Chen Shan. According to Lord Pei Ruo, click on the mountain gate 100 times. If you see the Lord again in the future, you can greet the Lord. Xianwei couldn't laugh or cry. Promoted? How old? The little guy was stunned, scratching his face, and his voice immediately went down. "Anyway, Lord Pei Ruo and Master Protector Zhou, we all have a spectrum in our hearts. I don't know, I never ask about it. It seems insincere." In that year, replacing Zhou Mili, Zhu Yitong took over as the right guardian of Qilong Lane. And in private, listening to the meaning of our guardian Zhou, Pei Qian may set up the general guardian of Qilong Lane in the future, and he is duty-bound. Such a heavy burden, I picked it. In the past few years, their secret hilltop has only held a meeting in the Patriarch Hall. This martial arts convention was magnificent and grand. It was on the square outside the Patriarch Hall of the Pao Mountain Jiasfeng. There was a table for benches, and the table was full of melon and fruit snacks. The chief rudder of Longquan County is now terribly expanding. He already has 2 sub-rudders under his jurisdiction. Donghua Mountain has 1 rudder, and Riding Longxiang has a separate rudder. And that piece of General Rudder Leader token was handed over to Pei Qian by Li Baoping, who was the former Wulin leader and General Rudder Leader. Pei Qian is now the master of the sub-rudder in Donghua Mountain, and the master of the sub-rudder in Qilong Lane. After Zhou Mili stepped down as the right guardian of Qilong Lane, he was promoted as the deputy rudder of Qilong Lane and became a high-ranking official. As for the sub-rudder worship, there are Qin Wanshu and Qin Lingjun. There is another school, Xiaoruo, under Donghuashan sub-rudder. The owner of Xiaoruo, Li Huai, is in charge of 2 Xiaoruo. They are Lu Guan and Ma Lian from Shania Academy's classmates with Li Huai. In the martial arts conference that participated in the Grand Martial Arts Conference that year, the Qinghuang Temple incense villain who had no credit but worked hard. Because he was promoted to the right guardian of Xianxia, he was allowed to sit on the table and discuss matters by the sub-rudder master Pei Qian. That time Li Baoping, the chief rudder and the honorary rudder of Xianxia sub-rudder, Dabai Go Cui Dongshan, were absent from the meeting. As a result, the big white goose was killed by the Guojue, and the master Pei Ruo, who was not recognized by the 6 relatives, recorded a big pass on the spot. As for the left guardian of Qilong Lane, but it was too mixed and he could only lie under the bench beside the table. Zhu Yitong said, "Come on to eat some melon seeds." Xianwei peeled off a melon seed and placed it on the edge of the brazier. Zhu Yitong nodded his head in appreciation and said, "Xianwei, let me tell you a heart-to-heart talk. One day I will be promoted. I will recommend it with Lord Pei Ruo and Zhou Hufa. You belong to the position." Xianwei smiled and said, "Should I thank you or should I thank you?" Shanjun Jinqing secretly left Shanjun's mansion, took a trip to Huangshan sword sect and found Jianxiu Yuanbai. Yuanbai joked, "Don't you want me to be the slave of the 3 surnames?" Jinqing said, "I think you should think about it carefully." Yuanbai hesitated for a moment or shook his head. "No matter who the first mountain lord of the Huangzhou sword sect is, no matter whether or not I can join the sect in the future, I still hope to stay here. The next sect of Luopa Mountain, Qingping sword sect of Xindu Mountain, will be the first sword sect in Tonggishao." Jin Qing continued to persuade, "Qin Pingon values you very much. You are not in the realm of kendo nor your identity. It is just a sympathy between sword repairs." Seeing Yuanbai smiling and not speaking, Jin Qing said, "Don't get me wrong. I think you can help me when you get there. I just think that when you go there it's better than staying with this misty Huangshan sword. Pai more comfortable." In fact, in accordance with the agreement with the young hermit, Jin Qing should have confirmed the restoration of the Dugu clan on the Rin River in the middle of Tonggishao before coming here to persuade Yuanbai to dig the corner of Xinyang Mountain. Yuanbai still shook his head and said, "Forget it, I won't go to Tonggishao." Jin Qing nodded and asked, "Then I just fly a sword and spread the word on the Lost Mountain?" Yuanbai smiled and said, "There is Lao Jin Shanjun. Nantang Lake in Aquarius Island." Qin Hujuan held a white bowl with a drop of water in it. A small drop of water condenses 80% of the water of the old Nantang Lake. Had it not been for the sword fairy Xiao Yunyan to remind her that Yuli did not agree, she would really want to secretly build a family temple, like shrine, and erect a memorial tablet for worshipping incense every day. As a lake and water monarch, in accordance with the rules of the current Dei court and the Zhongtu Confucian temple, he was allowed to open the mansion according to the regulations, similar to the mountain Jindandi Zion Kafing. This woman Hujuan plans to ask for a ritual instrument for the Confucian temple with Guanhu Academy and Shanaya Academy respectively, and then invite a book written by the sages of the Confucian temple. Before the young hermit, she took the initiative to give up the gift of merit. Because it's not a matter of business. Beiju Luzhou Dada Gongfu Linyuan Gongfu Shenlin built a plaque overnight, and hung it high, even higher than the Linyuan Gongfu plaque. Du Palace. At night, Shenlin stood outside the gate of his residence, looked up at the plaque handwritten by the young hermit, squinted and smiled. Taken from the phrase, German Tianyu. With a smile on his face, Shenlin murmured, "The German travels in the sky, the autumn moon and the cold river. The sun asks the moon to learn, the traveler misses hometown." According to legend, Zhongtu Shenzhou is the volcano group where the Daoist alchemy furnace is located. In a small wine shop, the woman who bought the wine smiled and said, "Ganzhou, do you want to recognize me as a master and learn the fairy law?" The girl asked directly, "What are the benefits?" Yangji said, "You can teach you several water methods." The girl frowned and said, "I may not be able to appreciate the skills of the teacher. Even if I do, I may not be able to practice. This is called the difference between the gods and the people, the great roads and the different paths." The woman smiled and said, "You can definitely practice. Maybe in the future you will turn from muddy to clear, and you will be able to practice along the way." The old mountain Gong Xinzhou, according to the Golden Jade genealogy of today's Confucian temple, ranks from the 7th rank, which is the Qinglu official body of the Shanshui officialdom. The Chaoqiu Ziahipo in front of him, like Hebo and landlord, belonged to the bottom turbid current subordinates, not as good as those county gods who belonged to the Qing dynasty. No way, the young hermit has reminded it, and the old scholar has also hinted. If I don't know anything about it, I'm worried about being put on shoes. Moreover, Qin Pingon was accompanied by a rebel Qing Tong, and I heard that Xiao is now the dead man by the young hermit. The veteran talents who restored the identity of when Xing came with Li Sheng. Xiaohipo asked, "Do you need to bow your head to serve tea?" Yang Ji slapped the fan, smiled and shook his head and said, "Unknown master and apprentice don't need it." Xiaohipo said boldly, "Why don't you register your name? Just register your name, you can do it in one step." Yang Ji smiled, thought about it for a moment and nodded, "It's okay." After the two sides had a bowl of wine, even if the two sides apprentice and accept apprentices, they are very relieved and have a good appetite. I asked Qin Pingon about whether she could ventilate with the Confucian temple and explore her breath, whether she could make herself like that wild peach pavilion or Xiao free in the awe-inspiring world, and she could establish a heart with the Confucian temple. Oath, learn from Bai Zhe, be imprisoned in a corner in name and live a good face every time you go out and travel. You will not be a big fan. Unfortunately, Qin Pingon did not give a clear answer at the time. Although Li Xing came later, but Yang Ji didn't dare to open this mouth. There was a suspicion that he had made an inch. What is the temper of the little master? Fei Fei and other wild juniors have only heard about it at most, but Yang Ji has seen it with his own eyes. It is important to know that none of the earliest scholars in the world is a fuel-efficient lamp, and this little master, as one of the 4 candidates for the ancient 1000s of the world, is even more. Hard to say. Anyway, the mountain cultivator of the wild demon race had only one idea when he saw this little master. It wasn't that he had to make a detour, but I shouldn't go out. After Xiaohipo left the wine shop, a gentleman from the academy with a jade pendant on his waist came. He did not hide his whereabouts and landed on the side of the wine shop. Gong Xinzhou, the old mountain on the side of Shangtou Mountain, noticed the movement and glanced at the figure of the other party. He was really a rare young man with a radius of hundreds of miles. The gentleman of the academy said straightforwardly, "Within 1,000 years without permission from the Confucian temple, you are not allowed to go to Nan Pasua Chao and Fu Yao Chao, and the rest of the 7 continents, especially not close to the 3 Guishu villages. Once the contract is breached, the decision will be executed. But there is a prerequisite here, you must take a trip to Tongyi's Hao immediately. Lord Chen Shan Luapa Mountain will help you reserve a part of the Lulu River water transport, but you need to use it for the excavation of Tongyi's Hao, as the price of your free life for 1,000 years. Yang Ji asked, "Is it all?" The gentleman nodded and said, "If you agree, I can immediately send a letter to the Confucian temple and report the matter to the record." Yang Ji hesitated for a moment. "Did you get it right?" The academy gentleman laughed blithely. "This is the decision of the Confucian temple, not a joke." In Daoist living in Shushan, an old Taoist priest left the Huangliang wine shop, rode a green bull, stepped up on the clouds and went to his Taoist temple. The Qingyo Taoist priest had made a decision, and the mountain monarch had no sense of interest, but he had to pay attention to it. Also, by the way, say hello to Dao Yuchen, reminding him that poor Dao is now practicing on Jushu Mountain. Welcome to come here as a guest. After leaving the night ship, the old Taoist returned to Niaoju Mountain on the Fusher Mountain of Jushu Mountain. At that time, the 5 great sacred mountains, the mountain monarch and the of water, were all the assistant officials of their group of real immortals. To put it simply, thousands of years ago the current mountain monarch Huailian was under his control and name. Now it's upside down. Tongyi's Hao Town Demon Tower. The group came to the top floor. The most sacred master leaned on a railing and looked into the distance and said with a smile, "In the middle of Tongyi's Hao, the great blasphemy requires the great monks to move mountains and seas, and now there are Yangji and Nin Taoists, plus fellow Daoists beating the drums. It's a lot more effective." Qin Pingon returned to his senses and nodded, "Maybe I need to discuss with the Lord Donghai." Just now, Qin Pingon was splitting his mind and gathered books and words. Previously, Shanjun Jinqing presented a tablet inscription, summarizing all the cliff inscriptions and inscriptions on the top of Zhongyue Mountain in the old Zhuang dynasty, up to more than 2,000 pieces. Huang Tingwo's Xiang mansion, the sword box sent by Wu Yi, besides containing an extremely rare sword pill, the Nil pill, the sword box itself carried more than 60 precious characters, which was also extremely precious. In the Kilolong waters of the Qiantang River, Qin Pingon borrowed poems from the literati Sa Ku of the past dynasties, totaling 300,000 words, winning by quantity. The Holy Master looked into the distance. A long river of time is like 2 words. Qin Pingon said, Yao. The most sage master said softly with emotion, if you want to make a mistake you must be a Dianpei. Qin Pingon said slowly, one can do everything for oneself and one can do everything for 1,000 and that's it. The strong think more, the weak can think less. The Holy Master nodded, was silent for a moment and asked with a smile. I asked you if you liked or disliked the book before, so is there a sentence that impresses you the most? Some. Qin Pingon gave a hum and said softly, Yu Jipin, there is no way to write a book. The Holy Master smiled knowingly. This idea is very good because it is also our group of students, the biggest feeling back then. Regarding the one in Qin Pingon, there are now several worlds. If you ignore the ancient Tianting ruins outside the sky, no more than 10 know this. Then don't forget, even if Qin Pingon is the new man and the old one, but one is one. Even if it was only half of the supreme existence back then, it was almost exactly half the half of Zhoumi who had gone to the sky. The most sage master said, Qin Pingon, you must keep your heart safe at least until you reach the 14th realm of sword repair. It is best not to let him out, especially pay attention, do not let him occupy the dominant position. Qin Pingon said solemnly, fight. If it was a half one of a 15th realm cultivator, there was nothing terrifying. So what if it is half of a 16th realm? The most sacred master stroked his beard and smiled, don't talk about Luchin, even I am afraid. For example, there must have been such a person in Ni Ping Alley at the beginning, who asked Dao Zhu to give way. Sword of Coming Chapter 950. A thin Taoist priest wearing a felt hat, a well-stitched cyan cotton gown, and a pair of thick cotton shoes, walked on the road like a thin bamboo pole. Next to him was a burly middle-aged man with a knife on his waist. The hilt of the knife was rubbed so that it became shiny. The man began to grow his beard a few months ago and soon his face was full of beard. The two parties walked together on the way back to their hometown. They were not far from their hometown, which was only 30 or 40 miles away, and both belonged to the boundary of Wuling County. In fact, the Taoist priest wanted the man to be more than 20 years younger just because he looked old, but he looked at least 10 years older than the latter. The key point is that although this Taoist priest does not have an officially recognized urn, he is a private urn, but he is a genuine cultivator, and his friends around him are pure martial arts. The two returned from a long journey together. This trip took several years, traveled a lot of places and saw a lot of strange people and things. It is Yuan Lu, the king of the rice thief, a martial artist in the same line as a swordsman, a consummate cultivator in the Yupu realm, and a martial artist who is at the top of the 9 realms at any time. In this blue underworld, the Taoist priests of the rice thief line only look at the word rice thief, and know that their situation is not so good. They are similar to the corpse Zhou Xian, the porter and the one-character teacher, and they will not walk on the street. The masters are screaming and beating the wrong way, but it is best not to get close to the Baiyujing realm. Once you find your whereabouts, you will probably go to the 12th floor of the 5 cities as a guest. Qigu asked, do you think I should agree to Zhou Xian's invitation? During the tour I once passed through Yongzhou among the 14 states of Qingming. It is one of the most abundant geomantic treasures of water transportation. The Qingshan dynasty of Bingzhou and the Yufu dynasty of Yongzhou are the most powerful dynasties in this state, and are second to none. Somehow the two were discovered by the young female emperor of the Yufu dynasty. Zhou Xian personally showed up and invited Qigu to serve as a royal worship. However, both parties know that the female emperor Zhou Xian of the Yufu dynasty is cutting the hu, because Qigu may be the strongest at any time and anywhere as the strongest martial artist. If you break through the Yufu dynasty, you can add a considerable amount of martial arts gifts, so Zhou Xian not only offered an enshrined status, but also offered a very generous price. Regardless of the salary, Zhou Xian promised to take out a weapon from the royal secret library, which could be used by Qigu. The time limit is 300 years, which is extremely tempting. This peerless and famous spear named Broken Formation has always been the treasure of the Yufu dynasty. Become a martial artist of the end and hold this gun again and he will be invincible against the air trainers under the Immortal. Don't talk about winning or losing, it is estimated that it will be difficult for the opponent to run. Anyone who can rank among the young and alternate 10, whether it is a monk or a martial artist who has few killers. On the other hand, on the Azure God dynasty, it seemed that it didn't matter where the Qigu broke through. So far, even a Taoist official hasn't appeared, let alone the emperor and Yashang Yao Qing. Be very angry with you. Lao Tzu is a martial artist of the 9 realms, so he doesn't come into your sight. Wang Yunlu said. Anyway, you can't move your legs after seeing a good-looking mother-in-law. Qi Gu said in a bad mood. You will only be stubborn. Wang Yunlu really dared to be so prosperous on his side. When he saw an outsider, he would knot his tongue and he couldn't explain it clearly. For example, on the side of the female emperor Zhou Xian, Wang Yunlu kept his head down, red with ears, almost like a question and answer. Before Lu Tai and Yuaning, the Taoist priests were drinking too much, somehow. Just a few words to that young Master Lu. When he drank to the point of sadness, his drink was poor. He cried so much that he didn't go crazy because of the drunkenness. Probably the only exception is the Taoist priest son of the Xuanda, who was called Cheap Ancestors by Wang Yunlu for many years. Wang Yunlu was indeed very heroic on the side of the old Guanzhou, and he dared to curse Leaguapi face to face. The Old View Master is the 5th person in the world who can't be beaten by thunder. Especially the mantra of, the poor people like to be kind to others, and never make overnight enemies with others, which is well known in the Qingming world. Therefore, Qi Gu had persuaded Wang Yunlu privately. On the old god's side, he still had to be polite, but he couldn't persuade him. If I go home this time, I won't even see Lu Jing, so I won't put my hot face on my cold ass. Qi Gu became more and more angry, cursing and grinning. Damn, the fragrance of home flowers is not as good as the fragrance of wild flowers, so I can't blame Laozi for the fragrance of flowers outside the wall. Wuling County, located in the Jiangyi of the Qingshan dynasty, is a place where rich and noble families gather and aristocratic clans lined up. Wuling County has 5 counties under its jurisdiction, Chongmao Junyangping. Since it is where the imperial tomb is located, it was actually a place specially used by the Qingshan dynasty to gather and place the founding lords. Today's county guard, Lu Jing, is a relative of the emperor, and he also has the status of a temple official. Jingqing and Jiangyi Taoist priests are under his control. In addition, all the mountains and rivers of the Qingshan dynasty were set up with palaces to promote officials, which were often used by the imperial court to place idle ministers who were old, more like honorary titles. Wang Yunlu said, Be careful that Yao Shoufu is staring at you. Qi Gu asked, Isn't it? Wang Yunlu frowned slightly and said, It's hard to tell. Qi Gu hesitated for a moment and still used the method of gathering sound to form a line, and whispered to a friend around him. Fortunately, our Bingzhou is under the jurisdiction of Verdant City, otherwise we would have been taken care of by the second child of Baiyujing Road. Wuling County, there will never be today's vitality. Wang Yunlu said, The same source is different and the water is different. The people live by the water. Of course they like the flat water. Flooding occurs every 3 days. Individuals can't stand it. They have to complain and complain. Qi Gu smiled and said, Occasionally I can still make a few words of truth. Qi Gu remembered something and said, I heard that Zhang Jiaoyu has recruited a new disciple. The Taoist grinned, Fate is good, I won't be envious. Qi Gu joked, Su Jun's fate is considered good. The Taoist thought for a while, shook his head and said, Sect Master Su is not only good for fate. No, Sect Master's fate is actually not good, hard fate is the real ability. Qi Gu said, One day I will marry that white lotus root as my daughter-in-law. Taoist priests habitually lowered their heads and sleeves, their stature rickety. Anti-spicy, I really want to marry, just chew chili peppers every day. Qi Gu's eyes gleamed, he shook his wrists and grinned. As long as I win her 1 game, get married, and lose to her 100 or 1,000 games, it's all a problem. There are 2 types of fights. The Taoist whispered and complained, Why do you speak so nasty? Qi Gu said, Do you understand this? In the last 100 years, as the crops are on New Year's Eve, a large number of proud children of the heavens have emerged in Wuling County. There are only 2 of the 10 young candidates in the world. In addition, one of the ancestors of the Fulu school, Daifishan Huayang Palace, has a young monk with a leisurely Taoist name, and Keishishan has a female Taoist official with the Taoist name Nanshan. 2 recognized heavenly fairy embryos are now young people. Baby monk. At this moment, these 2 on the road are both young generations from Wuling County. Yuran and Nanshan are also one of the 3,000 Taoists who rushed to the colorful world. Although the 2 came from rival sects, they were in the same year. Born in the same month and on the same day, even the hour is the same. This is a match made in heaven so that the two Dao officials of Difei Mountain and Saisho Mountain now have some subtle changes in their hearts. In fact, Wang Yuanlu and Qi Gu wanted to travel to the colorful world together, but the rules set by the Haoran Tianwen Temple were over there, and the realm of both sides exceeded the threshold and they couldn't go there. In the eyes of Taoist officials on the mountain, Wuling County is a cornucopia, a nest of gods. In the eyes of several worlds, it is a golden and jade dojo that can be compared to the Liju cave of the Haoran world. There are dandies who are lying on the ancestors' merit books and waiting to die, and there are also children from Wuling who are a young man who is full of energy and work hard at his own time. Young ranger. Anyway, they are all Wuling teenagers who are famous all over the world. But in the eyes of Wang Yuanlu and Qi Gu, it was just hometown. The rich are very rich and the poor are too poor to open the pot and live their own lives. Lily Yuan went to the grass, fresh clothes and angry horses on the official road, dusty, and a group of rich and distinguished guests came. These horses are all young men and women with sabers bowed back, riding horses to find flowers, romantic and heroic, full of spirits and full of fierce spirit. The Taoist priest was just the opposite, cowering, scornful, full of trivial matters. Wang Yuanlu hurriedly moved, did not fight with the other side, took the initiative to avoid those extremely powerful and mysterious high-headed horses. Qi Gu had to follow the road, and waited for the grandson to ride the horse away. Qi Gu raised his hand and waved. Waving the dust, one hand habitually digs out the crotch and smiles. Just talk about the appearance of the skin. It really depends on whether the seed is good or not. Both of us will not help and we will suffer a big loss. Therefore in the future we must find a good-looking wife. Wang Yuanlu didn't talk and was silent for a moment and said, the habit of digging out the crotch can be changed if it can be changed. When the woman sees it, at least the goodwill will be halved. Qi Gu smiled and said, the guy is too big to be in the right position. Wang Yuanlu said, why do you lift the belt of your pants every time you release the water? Qi Gu was speechless. How do you compare this with me? The two passed by a pavilion by the side of the road. Inside, a group of gambling ghosts were throwing dice, rubbing their hands together, and Wang Yuanlu glanced sideways. Qi Gu laughed. Don't worry, the old rules, since I have promised you I will definitely do what I say. Let's forget it today, I will send you home first. Qi Gu had a problem when he was young and he was addicted to gambling. Later I met Wang Yuanlu and became friends. As a result, Qi Gu had suffered 2 big losses in the capital of the Xianxia dynasty and Luzhou because of gambling. On both occasions Wang Yuanlu hurried to hear the news to help settle the situation. The so-called settlement is very simple. It is the matter of Wang Yuanlu who took the money to settle the problem, rescued Qi Gu twice and blazed a trail of blood. It can even be said that the reason why Wang Yuanlu became a Taoist priest in the line of rice thief was given by Qi Gu. However, in those years Wang Yuanlu complained to Qi Gu at most, and was hungry for 9 meals with his eldest brother in 3 days. Wang Yuanlu's idea is very simple and simple. It is my own choice to agree to be a friend with you. Since I am a friend, I have to be like a friend. Friends don't treat me as a friend. It's a problem with my eyesight. There is nothing to complain about. After a few hardships I feel that I can't stand it anymore and I just parted ways. Afterwards Wang Yuanlu set a rule for Qi Gu. As long as you are at the gambling table and don't want to make money, you can gamble on it. Hundreds and thousands of taels, even the fairy money is fine. If you have no money you can borrow money from me to gamble. But as long as you want to make money, even if it's just a few pennies, don't bet. Otherwise we won't be friends in the future. Wang Yuanlu's only purpose in making friends is not to be stingy, to have a few close friends. This kind of talent is worth making. Qi Gu asked, I still don't plan to pierce the window paper? You don't want to show your identity to your brother? Wang Yuanlu said helplessly, I'm afraid. Qi Gu muffled and said, I have to blame me. If Wang Yuanlu was not a side-door Taoist in the line of the Mi thieves and received the urn at the court of the Xianxia dynasty, his brother's family would be regarded as a fighting way, immortals and chickens and dogs. Don't talk about splashing the sky and wealth. Set up a door in this Wuling county, open the branches and scattered leaves, and then pass on the incense for several generations. It can't be said that it is the family of the prefecture in the same place. Now that he hasn't become it, he is involved. Wang Yuanlu has too many enemies on the mountain. Wang Yuanlu shook his head. It's not like that. Little days have the stability of small days, and my elder brother also has his own life. Qi Gu can only treat himself as a friend comforting himself. Wang Yuanle's brother named Wang Yuanfu is a local butcher. Today, holding a pair of large intestines and a pound of loose wine from a roadside wine shop, he wandered to the door of his son-in-law's Huangni hut, smelling with a face. I met my daughter and son-in-law who went out to greet me and complained. I fell the stove and lost my luck and married a daughter who was supposed to marry a rich man as a wife and marry you, a poor devil who is a treasure in this world. Over the years, I don't know how much I've been tired, but now I don't know what virtues accumulated in my ancestors, which led you to become a Taoist boy, and there will be more reasons not to do business in the future. My heart is fat and I don't know how much hardship I will spend in the future. Silver, could it not be owed to you in the previous life and the debt is collected in this life? If there is another life, please remember to pay it back to me. Wang Yunfu bent down and lowered his head. How dare he return his mouth, glanced at the hip flask, swallowed, and he was indeed greedy. Not surprisingly, a jug filled with a caddy of loose wine, the old man still had to take it home after drinking the wine. The identity of the Taoist boy who was said by the old husband to be lifted by him is actually a candidate for Taoist priests, similar to Howren's Tongxing fame. With this identity, he will participate in the county government examination once every 3 years. Opportunity: after passing the exam, you can get the status of an orthodox Taoist recognized by the imperial court. However, it is still one step away from the real master of Taoism, and you have to wait to fill the vacancy. When there is a real vacancy, whether it is an official errand or a temple, can you be regarded as a serious Taoist official? The big and round Tuzi said to the daughter who seemed to throw water out, "Go boil the intestines and then boil a pot of wine to eat." Wang Yuanfu led the old man into the house and walked a little later. The old man was very loud and spitting. Wang Yuanfu secretly raised his sleeve and wiped his face. When the old man sat down, Wang Yuanfu shook his robe and took a seat lightly. Tuzi took a look from the corner of his eye. He was very careful and really regarded himself as a Taoist official just for the sake of that Taoist boy. Then he resisted not saying anything and asked, "Where is your brother who hasn't lived all the year round?" Wang Yunfu smiled bitterly. "It's been a long time since I heard from you." The old man sneered, "I don't know how to send a letter from my family. I raised a younger brother for nothing." Fortunately, Wang Yuanlu is still a literate man who has read a book. These years he has been so pitiful to be outside, so he won't even get a copy. "I can't bear to spend the money for the letter." According to the genealogy of the ancestral hall in the village, it is the original character, and the name needs to be embedded with the word Yuan. In fact, Wang Yuanle's real name is Wang Yuanlu. Wang Yuanfu still didn't dare to talk back. In the world of Qingming, Taoist officials have a wide range of identities and titles. It is not only Qi practitioners who can become Taoist. Ordinary masters without the qualifications to practice can also obtain Taoist salutes as long as they pass the government examination, but they will be given different methods. In addition to those issued by the imperial court, there are also those that have been passed on from generation to generation. There are also some masters who have gained the Taoism and Zhenjing, secretly taught talismans and opened the door to the wind. Like this Wang Yuanfu who was looked down upon by the old man. Even if he was lucky enough to become a Taoist official in the future, most of it would still be like that turbulent subordinate official. If he does not enter the Qinglu rank, his future promotion path will be relatively narrow, and he is most likely to be transferred. Go to a remote small Taoist temple, or work as an errand in some Qingshui yamen like the county government office and the brewing bureau. But for Wang Yuanfu, who was born in poverty and had no shoes, if there is such a day, it is already a matter of glorious lintel. He can go to the village ancestral hall to burn incense and worship the ancestors. Just like the younger brother Wang Yuanlu who has studied Taoism law for 20 years, he has applied for many times and failed to get an official Taoist official, mainly in Wuling County. The number of Taoist priests is limited. There are many typical monks and few kanji. Those wealthy children who studied at a young age and had masters' preaching and teaching careers, of course, have inherent advantages and are good at arranging questions. After all, the examiner and Taoist who have the title of lawyer, how to make questions is also a matter of learning. Besides, I blame my younger brother Wang Yuanlu for being too high-spirited. He was so eager to get the prestigious master of the largest Taoist temple in his hometown. He passed the exam. After several years of walking experience, he hopes to be responsible for the abbot of Taoist science and technology. The rail instructs the officials to sit as the prestige of advance and retreat. It's just that the prestigious masters in the largest Taoist temple in Wuling County, how easy it is to pass the exam, let alone Wang Yuanlu, are those who have been overwhelmed by their ancestors, and now there is no such thing as a fall in the family. The old man said, "Your brother is just a thing that can't be helped. It's best if you don't return it. It's a matter of multiple pairs of chopsticks, but it's actually not a problem." When my daughter begged himself to help her uncle, he helped find a silver shop apprentice in the county seat. How good is it to make a living? Otherwise there would be the old saying, "A thief is not a silversmith." Never thought that the kid didn't know what was good or bad. He couldn't live or die and had to stay on the mountain. Coincidentally, Wang and son-in-law were talking about Wang Yuanlu. Wang Yuanlu returned to his hometown, stood outside the threshold at this moment and shouted, "Brother." Seeing his younger brother who hadn't seen him for several years outside the door, Wang Yuanfu was very happy, but he was still stern, just about to stand up but just raised his butt. He quickly sat back on the bench, just nodded and said, "Go to the stove. Over there, say hello to your sister-in-law." Wang Yuanlu gave a hum, turned around and left. 2Z slapped the table and said with an aura, "I didn't know how to say hello to me when I saw each other, something that I didn't understand." Wang Yuanfu smiled and said, "This is how Yuanlu was when he was a child. He is a little more withdrawn and he is not close to anyone." 2Z sneered and sneered. As far as his ethics is concerned, someone needs to be willing to get close to whomever he wants to be close to. People in their 30s are already in their 30s. You can't even find an ugly ant on the bed. Putting your face on the grave to worship your ancestors is counted, one head is killed, the incense is burned, and the next life is a good fetus. At least don't look so stubborn, walk at night, let alone scare people, ghosts will be scared to death by him. Wang Yuanfu's face was embarrassed. After all, it's the old man, not easy to get angry. After a meal, 2Z and Wang Yuanfu were sitting on the table. Wang Yuanlu was reluctant to eat at the table, so he picked up a few chopsticks and vegetables and squatted at the door holding a bowl. Wang Yuanfu persuaded him that he knew that this younger brother was a very determined person, and he didn't understand the world, so he couldn't persuade him. Wang Yuanlu bowed his head to pick up rice outside the door, but Chigu did not go to the door and went back to each house. The rice in the bowl was very strong and the rice spoon was pressed hard. When the rice bottomed out, Wang Yunlu held the large white bowl and stared at the front in a daze. Without complaining about the hardship of the world, the dumb smiled and ate coptis. Wang Yunlu turned his head, raised his head again, swallowed that mouthful of rice and asked, "Why did Bixiao Cave Lord come?" In the previous round of Mingyu's migration to the Qingming world, on that day Wang Yuanzhen saw this old man in a distance, with a big frame and a high level of Taoism, and he stood beside the second child of Bai Yujing Dao. I heard Sun Guanzhu said that it was the cave master of Bixiao Cave in Luobao Beach, who lived a long time of 10,000 and then increased for thousands of years, and liked to break his wrist with Dao ancestors. If I will meet this senior in the future, I will kowtow a few times without saying anything. It must be correct. The old Guanzhu said calmly, "Wander around." Wang Yunlu nodded and said, "Whatever you want." It seems that the higher the Dao Fa of the other party, the less stage fright the young Taoist priest will be. The old master asked, "What do you see so sad?" Wang Yunlu replied, "The sky is like a dragon," and the colossal body quietly fell to the ground, and the body was covered with mosquitoes, flies and maggots, lingering. Over time it may be full of flowers and plants. So sad. How to say? The grass grew and flowers bloomed and the mountains and plains were all gone. Of course we can wait another time, but what if we are those flowers and plants? Hearing this, the master of Old View showed a look of approval and smiled, "Who do you not practice?" Wang Yunlu continued to hold the bowl and asked, "Is the world going into chaos?" Old Guanzhu asked, "Does this kind of future matter have anything to do with you?" Wang Yunlu nodded, "Not yet." Lower your head and chop the rice, eat the last bite of rice, chew slowly, and the young Taoist priests chewed on the words Jiang and Lai together. The old man smiled while stroking his beard, "The life is in the sky and the life is in me." In the land of Jiangyi of the Qingshan dynasty, a royal palace called Changsha Palace has a three-wu temple with a bright yellow cloud pattern glazed tile, which is the first of a country's Taoist temple. Today Yaxiang Yaoqing and national teacher Bai O are here to entertain two distinguished guests. They are a pair of Taoists with different ages, the master of the Great Tide Su Jun and the founder of Liangjing Mountain. Yao Qing took the couple of Taoists around Sanwu Temple and came to an elegant house, where Bai-O personally made tea to entertain the guests. The Taoist temple is so named because of the 3 phoenix trees planted by the founding emperor before the Taoist temple, named Yitong, Wutong and Jingtong. Plant bananas for 1 day, bamboo for 1 year and willow for 10 years and pine for 100 years. Plan for thousands of years to plant phoenix trees. The green Liu's Guizhou stretches and is the best in the state. And the 3 phoenix trees had already been successfully refined and served as royal consecrations. This place is also the place where the first emperor of the Xianxia dynasty died and left alone. And Yaxiang Yaoqing, of course, is the head of the Guming minister who has no suspense. In Qingming world, there is no such rule that emperors and monarchs cannot practice in Haoran world. Therefore, in the 14 states in the world, there is often that emperor who is not only the founder of the country but also the king of the subjugation. In the Haoran world, it is extremely rare to be the emperor of longevity to claim the emperor's reign. But here, anyone who sits on the dragon chair for no more than a year belongs to the short-lived emperor. On Bingzhou Mountain there is an undocumented gossip. It is said that before the death of the emperor he had a heart-to-heart dialogue with Yaxiang Yaoqing. The first emperor once said, "It is not the blessing of the society to master the doubts of the young country, and the emperor can take it for himself." Yaoqing replied, "If I have the strength to face south, I can help the young master to become a Mingjun." As for how this private face-to-face conversation between the monarch and the ministers spread, Sun Guanzhu said with certainty that it must be our old man Lu, who was the gentleman of Liangshang, who overheard the conversation and couldn't stop talking. The female crown-titled Resurgence took the teacup from Bai-O root and asked with a smile, "Why did you think of asking that monster a punch?" She didn't care whether she would be taboo, whether she would sprinkle salt on the wounds of the white lotus root. White lotus appearance is extremely colorful, charming and natural. On her waist there is a very well-known short halberd named Iron Chamber. The Pei Cup of the Daoist dynasty and the Haoran are all female masters, and they are all masters of the same country. Almost every 10 years Bai-O will ask one of the 10 martial artists who have jointly commented on it. In 4 rounds of Wenquan, Bai-O won a complete victory and 3 died. The only one who survived also fell. Therefore the world's 10 masters of Jiazi's commentary fell by 4 at once, and Wu's commentary was reduced to a joke and decoration. Although Bai-O is a woman, she presents an invincible and majestic posture at the top of martial arts in the Qingming world. A short halberd, unmatched, sweeping the world. It's just that Bai's choice of this time and Run Yefeng's hard questioning of fists is definitely not a wise move in the eyes of the outside world. After all, he was a pure swordsman who even Daozu admired. The white lotus noodles had a bitter color and shook his head, not willing to talk about it. They all failed to reach the top of Leap Moon Peak, but only walked halfway up the mountain and received a punch. It was I who suggested that Bai-O go to Runyue Peak and try to see what I really have. Yaoqing said with a smile. Lin Jiangxian made 2 shots before. It was too measured and easily misunderstood by Bai-O, and his self-esteem was too high. White Lotus Root and Runyue Peak worked hard. Both of them were the gods of Wufu's limit. One was the second in the world and the third. Yaoqing smiled and said, "The gap is not small, and I still haven't been able to try the hard work of martial arts." Bai-O root can be described as obedient to the elegant appearance of this master and father. Chao Gu said, "This rice thief King Yunlu, with his sharp sense of mind, is about to catch up with the Ascendant Realm. Didn't the Azure God dynasty intend to recruit?" Yaoqing smiled and said, "This guy is just a troublemaker. The more trouble he is, the more trouble he will come to find him. Our Azure God dynasty can't stand it." Bai-O knows a secret matter. Before Wang Yuanlu became famous, Master Shofu took him to Wuling County several times. He saw this young man but did not teach any Taoism, as if just chatting. Chaoga asked tentatively, "Then let Wang Yuanlu go to Liangjing Mountain. I can guarantee that he can be the mountain lord in the future. How about?" Yaoqing shook his head and said, "Neither he nor Liang Jingshan have this fate." Bai-O has been observing that Sujun, which is strange. This young ghost repairer is not surprising at all. How can you have so many opportunities? In the past it was the rival Dachao Zong and Liang Jingshan. Now the two are side by side regardless of top and bottom. Anyway, the authentic lord is Sujun. It was not that Liang Jingshan had no objections at the beginning, but Chaoga was the originator of the mountain and she had no objection. What about the disciples and grandchildren? In addition to the later wedding banquet on the mountain, which was hailed as unprecedented, 4 of the guests who drank the wedding wine were among the top 10 in Qingming. Yidou Lushan Wuzhou Sun Huaizhong. If you add in that there was a pure martial artist who did not reveal his identity at that time, because he was only willing to sit at the corner table, and this person was also Su Jun's year-end friendship, then there would be 5. It is the first person in martial arts in the world, Lin Xian. Moreover, Su Jun's path of practice is too legendary. It is rumored that the 3 heads of Bai Yujing taught Lu Xun and taught Su Jun a few talismans. The Xuandu watched Sun Huaizhong and taught young ghosts to teach swordsmanship. The sub-sage of the Confucian Temple has taught Su Jun what he has learned, coupled with the first person in the world to make alchemy, and Lin Jiangxian's boxing skills, so that the outside world is speculating whether this Su Jun is a true disciple of the Daoist ancestor. It's like an examination paper. Even if you know the answer in advance, Su Jun will have to write and write. From the beginning of becoming a ghost, in just 2 decades, Su Jun wants to meet so many big people and he is busy. Chao Gu said, "Zimi, I need to trouble Yaxiang for this visit." Yao Qing smiled and said, "Senior, please say it." Yixiang Yao Qing, the word capital beauty. Calculated according to the age on the mountain, Chao Gu is a well-deserved senior, more than 1,000 years older than Yao Qing. Chao Gu said sternly, "I need to ask you to go out of the mountain to help protect the road." Yao Qing said straightforwardly, "Location?" Chao Gu said, "It's in Liangjingshan." Yao Qing asked, "Specific time?" Chao Gu was relieved, "Undecided for the time being, wait for my secret letter." Yao Qing smiled and said, "I wish Sect Master Su and Daoist fellows in the restoration of the mission every wish." Su Jun stood up, took 3 steps back, respectfully bowing his head and said in a deep voice, "The juniors are here to thank Mr. Yao." Originally did not intend to be such a polite Chao-ga, so the husband sang the woman's accompaniment, got up to say thank you to Yao Qing. The 14th level female Xiao Wuzhou with the Taoist name Taiyin has a very good relationship with Chao-ga. After attending the wedding banquet at the beginning, before leaving, Wuzhou gave Su Jun a refining fairy tactic, and then taught an additional one. The door has long been lost to the ghost repairing technique. Husband Su Jun is a ghost. In the next few worlds, among the new 14-realm great monks, it is no accident that there will be a ghost and immortal who can occupy a place. Therefore Su Jun not only had to fight but also had to move fast and grasp the ascendant realm to get the upper hand. In fact, Su Jun, who has a mantra of already very good, did not have this idea at all, but in this matter the Taoist couple Chao-ga is extremely insistent, that is, women can only sing along with their husbands. Now that everything is ready, I only owe a retreat. After Su Jun and Chao Gu left, Bai O and Yao Qing stood under the eaves and she asked softly, "Wang Yunlu really leave it alone?" Yao Qing smiled and said, "Beautiful jade is not carved." Bai O hesitated for a moment, but couldn't help but ask the doubt in his heart. "It looks like Chigu will be able to break the border immediately. Should we reject this martial arts gift? According to the spy, the Yufu dynasty is there." Zhou Xian went out in person. Chigu is not a pure martial artist in the city. On the contrary, he is slightly reckless. He likes to go straight and has a clear love and hate. If he is a little bit better here, it is not difficult to keep him in the Azure God dynasty. In fact, in the turmoil in the capital that year, Bai O had different opinions from Master Shofu. In her opinion, she could take the opportunity to attract Wang Yuanlu and Chigu, and the two would not be so stalemate with the court. It was during that dangerous escape route that Wang Yuanlu and Chigu broke through their respective borders that year, and one entered the Yuanying realm and the other into the far travel realm. Yao Qing said, "Lu Yi will always return to its roots." Bai O said helplessly, "It's fallen leaves after all." Yao Qing smiled and said, "Let's wait and see." Not long after the pair of famous Taoists left Qinggu Temple, a man walked slowly who turned out to be an extremely rare monk in the Qingming world. Bald, barefoot, dressed in purple robes. This middle-aged monk has plump cheeks, high nose and ancient appearance. Bai O Root only knows this walking monk. The common name is Xianxia, the word is Taoyin, and the Dharma name is Danqing. As for the face, the other party must have used blindfolding techniques, and what Bai O saw in his eyes was definitely not the truth. It has been nearly 10 years for monks to place orders at Huiko Temple in Jiangyi. Whether it is Jiang Xiu, whose real name is Jiang Xiu, or the name of Dan Qing, there is no reputation in the Qingming world, but Yaxiang Yao Qing is very polite to him. Bai O is a pure martial artist and she can't see the depth of the other party's Taoism. She has no idea about Zen or Buddhism. The 14 states under Qingming have extremely strict control over Buddhist temples and Confucian academies. Especially monks who want to go out to travel and obtain customs clearance documents, they need to file with the court, and they will be rejected in all likelihood. Even if they are approved, the specific itinerary needs to be filed with by Yujing. Many dynasties simply banned any monks from entering the country. There are even 2 states that directly ban temples and do not allow monks to teach the Dharma. Bingzhou is relatively relaxed, but it is as big as the Qingshan dynasty with only 16 temples. However, the first auxiliary manpower rejected the public opinion, and the imperial court has begun to prepare for the construction of 2 brand new temples in recent years. In the world of Qingming, it may be more difficult for a monk to build a temple than to build a sect in the world of Haoran. This matter requires permission from Bai Yujing. For this reason, the Azure God dynasty has expended a lot of merit. It is said that even the majesty who was ridiculed by Bezu as the nodding emperor rarely asked Master Shofu why. The purple-clothed monk folded his hands together and said softly, "The little monk is here to be alone with Mr. Yao." Yao Qing smiled and nodded. "Before the monk leaves, remember to leave the set of Luohan murals for Weiko Temple as agreed." In a temple, not all monks can be called monks. Only the abbot, the first monk, and other eminent monks can deserve this honorific title. Bai's heart moved slightly and she guessed the identity of the other party. "I remember that there was an extremely mysterious monk in the Qingming world. His appearance and identity were changeable, pretentious, and he claimed that my heart is a Buddha. And he also threatened that patriarch came to the West without intention. This monk is especially good at painting Luohan statues. Every time there is a real relic, it is a looting. Not to mention those temples, but the Taoist temples built by the emperors of the world. They are willing to support the real books. There are even more rumors. The evil demons do not need to set up altars by the local Taoist officials. You only need to take out the Arhat statue, whether it is praying for rain or filthy, all works." The monk smiled and said, 16 pictures? 18 pictures? Yao Qing smiled and said, "Of course, the more the better." The monk said, "The painting is finished." Yao Qing didn't feel surprised and asked, "Where are you going next?" The monk said, "First go to Yuzhou to enjoy the snow." Yao Qingji said goodbye. The monk smiled and nodded, chanting aloud a piece of scrap that was well known in the Qingming world, and he strode away. His style was outstanding, his figure dissipated, there was no ripple in the spirit of the world, and he disappeared in a flash. Bai O was silent for a moment and asked, "This person's cultivation level?" Besides Buddhism, swordsmanship is exquisite and straightforward, unparalleled in the world. Yao Qing said, "One sword, frost and cold, 14 states," he said, "and that's his." At the New Year's Eve shop in Qilong Lane, the shopkeeper sure is soft and mute, staying up late to watch for the new year. The grass head shop next door is going to be more lively. A pair of siblings, Zhao Xuxiao and Zhao Wan. A pair of seniors, Zhao Denggao and Tianjur. A pair of apprentices, white-haired boys, Yao Xiaoyan. Also add a Cui peanut who was abducted by the big white goose. The white-haired boy was stepping on the bench at this moment, pulling the 2 surnamed Zhao punches, yelling that the 2 brothers are good 5 liters 10 full houses and so on. On the New Year's Eve in the small town, there is the custom of asking for dinner. They will light up the lights and set up a table of wine and vegetables. The elderly and women will guard a brazier and will not stop by and just wait for the young and strong neighborhoods. Neighbors come here as guests. The guys who have good relationships with the neighbors will sit down and drink, eat vegetables and punch. The relationship is average. Most of them will go after a glass of wine. The elderly women greeted each other, and when they called out according to their seniority, grandparents, aunts and aunts, they filled the bags with fruits, sugar cane and the like. It's only late at night that every household closes the door, and then early in the morning, the men who are the heads of the family have to get up on time again because there are different times of the year, and there are rules for opening doors and burning firecrackers. The old welcomes the new. As for the specific time to open the door, it is often determined by some old people in the small town. It is said that the few shopkeepers who opened the red and white wedding shops in the small town in the early years understood this very well. Today those young people who have moved to Zhocheng are not so particular. It is said that some of them even open the door and let the housekeeper do the work for them. Although Huaihuang County nowadays the taste of the year is getting lighter year by year, and almost no one goes to ask for dinner, but the two shops in Qilong Lane still opened the door according to the old rules. With wine. Ro, who was sitting by the brazier, raised her head and looked towards the door when a distinguished guest came. A snow-white robe. The maid next to Song Jisun in Niping Alley in the past, Shi Gui, now the true Dragon King Zhu, is one of the 4 sea kings in the world. For some reason this Dong Haijun seems to be in a good mood at the moment. The inside of the shop was as bright as daylight in the New Year's Eve. Ro braced, carefully weighed it and called the other party a young girl and then smiled. Sit down and drink some wine? Wang Zhu nodded, crossed the threshold and sat at the table. Ro helped to pour the wine. Wang Zhu picked up the chopsticks. There was a plate of stinky mandarin fish on the table. Good. In the past, Nipping Lane was a hard place to settle down and get together. Otherwise you made money and moved to other wider streets early. According to the old town saying, this is a place with flowing water and there is no way to stay. Residents, so every Chinese New Year's Eve there is only the alley because there is a pretty widow so that no one will pass by the whole alley, and the 2 adjacent houses are roughly located in the middle of the alley. In fact, no one came to ask for dinner. At most it was a short cut or to the widow's house. Only then pass through Mud Bottle Alley without even looking at it. One is a bad luck broom star, the other is an illegitimate child with a mother and no father, who is not seen, plus a maid of unknown origin who is unrelated and unreasonable who rarely visits the house, and those 2 people of the same age do not visit each other. At that time Song Jisun, every time it was the 30th eve of the new year, he would often get angry and let Shigui simply close the gate of the courtyard. If love comes, the uncle rarely waits on you. This is not the case next door. The gate is always open. If there is snow in the alley, it will help gather the snow in the whole alley to the corner of the wall, making it easier for passers-by to walk. Song Jisun was bored occasionally and he liked to stand at the door of the house and began to talk strangely with Yin and Yang. In the middle of the night he opened the door and waited for ghosts to come. The peers in the house next door never returned their mouths. Later, when Qin Pingon met Lu Xianyang, he would watch the night together around the stove. Lu Xianyang often deliberately spoke in a loud voice. Wang Zhu turned his head and looked at the child standing on the small bench behind the counter. Hey, what's your name? The little mute who was flipping through the book raised his head and said blankly, Don't you know? My name is He. Wang Zhu didn't care about anything with this grumpy child. It was pretty good. Little thorny head. She smiled and took a chopstick to serve with wine and vegetables. The taste was good. She didn't have to go to Aquarius Island in vain, her ancestor. At the gate of the house, brand new blessing characters and spring couplets were put on. Ro hurriedly rounded up and said, His real name is Zhou Junchen and his nickname is Aha. She doesn't like to talk at ordinary times, so she has the nickname of a little dumb who is Pei Qian's apprentice. Wang Zhu mentioned the white porcelain wine glass, took a sip of the drink and smiled. Pei Qian's apprentice? Then you want to call Qin Pingon a master? The little mute wanted to say something about you, but when the shopkeeper Ro winked at him, the child had to swallow the words back into his stomach, pretending to be deaf and dumb. At the door there is a white-haired boy with arms around his chest, leaning against the door of the house and tut-tut there. Wang Zhu turned his head and smiled and asked, Are you? Can't even see the true state of the other party. The white-haired boy sneered, I'm afraid to scare you to death. Try it. I am a handyman disciple of Luopa Mountain, the only one. Wang Zhu smiled and raised the wine glass. Let me be shocked. The fairy mansion on the mountain can generally be divided into the ancestors of the ancestor hall, the outer gate and the disciples of the handyman. The so-called ancestry, that is, the master and the preacher, have seats in the ancestor hall. In the outer door, the teacher's inheritance and the Dharma lineage are the same. Master failed to sit down and participate in discussions at the Zhuxiatang Jinyu genealogy, but because there are no chairs at the Patriarch Hall of Jiaisfeng, if they accept disciples now, even if it is personally passed on, they still belong to outer disciples. As for the handyman, he doesn't even have a teacher. They often enter the mountain and barely start mountaineering practice, but they are not qualified and cannot apprentice a teacher. The white-haired boy swaggered into the house, stood on tiptoe and sat on the bench by the table with arms around his chest, staring blankly at the young woman with a special identity, Danfeng eyes, melon face, beautiful but cold. A little bit. Wang Zhu has a calm look, drinks and drinks for himself with a few chopsticks and wine and dishes. The white-haired boy asked, I heard that you and our hidden official ancestor have been neighbors for many years? Wang Zhu said. The white-haired boy asked with a smile in his heart. Have you ever thought that you can't go down in the barren world? What if you change to the Qingming world? Wang Zhu frowned slightly. Is that what he meant? Back then she resisted not going to the barren world through Guishu, and indeed she had experienced some mental torment. Facts have proved that it is the right choice to have no luck. Or will the monk of the sneaky dragon breeder put a fishing net somewhere in the ruins and catch it right? The white-haired boy rolled his eyes. The hidden official ancestors have a heavy workload, and they are busy with major events that can affect the trend of the world casually. How can you care about such trivial things? I just mentioned it casually. Qin Qinglu, the dragon slayer, although he is not a pure sword repair in the 14th realm, he is a real 14th realm at any rate. When a battle is over, the world is going to happen in his cohesive way. I don't want to see you. Qin Qinglu once made a great aspiration to teach that there is no real dragon in the world. There is a loophole here to drill. There is no such thing as the world, but Qingming can have it. She could barely conflict with Qin Qinglius main road. When she got there, the girl Zhigui looked for a few more patrons. Well, to be precise, they are each other's patrons. Allies, everyone should make a good plan and make a big one. As a place of refuge, what day would you be afraid of the dragon-slashing people who crossed the world? They say that the strong dragon does not crush the snake, so it is just a snake that crosses the river. Can you not be afraid of the dragon? The great monks in the Haoran world and the Qingming world, traveling between the two worlds, are to suppress the realm in accordance with the rules set by the Confucian Temple Ritual Saint and the Baiyujing Grand Master. Wang Zhu smiled and shook his head. Even if it is the same 14th level cultivator, as long as the opponent is a dragon slayer, I have no chance of winning. As long as I don't run, I will definitely die. Even in the East China Sea, which looked like his own dojo and entered the 14th realm, Wang Zhu admitted that he could not fight against the dragon slayer. The only advantage is that as one of the 4 seas lords under the edict of the Confucian Temple, Qin Qinglu did not dare to ask Jianshui Mansion casually. Unexpectedly, Wang Zhu settled on the matter. Not only the real dragon but also the many dragons of different bloodlines in the world, but also a few of the world's aquatic spirits, Narcissus, and even the Qi practitioners who major in water law. Qin Qinglu, who has succeeded in cutting the dragon and has some kind of great fortune, will be defeated by the natural road. Simply put, facing these 3, Qin Qinglu can be regarded as a pure sword repairman in the 14th realm. Once the sword is released, it is like cutting melons and vegetables. The white-haired boy frowned silently and looked solemn. It seems to be thinking about some big problem, but in fact it is just defamation. Why is it different from the information in the spy? Could it be that the Xiaomi grain information is wrong and the military information is falsely reported? It's not always said that the neighbor of the ancestor of the hidden officer, the neighbor of Mud Bottle Alley, has eyes on the eyebrows. Why is it so self-knowing? Forget it, being a lobbyist is really not my good point. Xiaobai, who is in addition to the palace, is the kind of expert who walks freely. On the side of the night ship, someone asked her to persuade Wang Zhu to go to the crane tower in the Qingming world to build the road. It is the best. According to that person anyway, even if Wang Zhu went to Qingming world, her existence was a tasteless one for Sui Chu Gong. Apart from helping gather water transport, she was destined to be of little help. Thinking of Wu Shuangjiang, the white-haired boy hurriedly raised his wine glass, suffocated and was shocked by the drink. The Qi practitioner is not afraid of his own inner demon, but the Waoweishan demon is afraid of the Qi practitioner. If this kind of embarrassment spreads, he can't be laughed out of his teeth? Wang Zhu suddenly asked. I heard that there is a large gate called Sui Chu Gong in Qingming world, and there is a stork tower by the water? The white-haired boy was stunned and said with a guilty conscience, I am a monk born and raised in the world. Wang Zhu smiled and turned it off. The white-haired boy was very worried and asked tentatively, Did not mind, what are you asking about this? Wang Zhu raised the wine glass and said with a smile, Don't talk about these annoying things. If you hit a match, then drink. The white-haired boy lifted the wine glass, tapped it lightly. Let's go. The white-haired boy looking at Wang Zhu's eyes, there is a kind of miserable sympathy for both of us. When Wang Zhu was aware of this emotion, it was rare that he was not angry, as if being pitiful by a handyman disciple who claimed to be Luopishan. Couldn't he be angry? After drinking the wine, Wang Zhu walked out of this New Year's Eve shop and climbed up the stairs on the side of Qilong Alley. She slowly climbed up and she missed the cold season before leaving the town. She was also full of frostbite on her hands. So every time she went out to fetch water from the iron lock well, She only carried half of the bucket of water, swaying and reaching the mud. Pour it into the water tank in Pingxiang Alley, and there is only half a bucket of water left. Later, when we met for the last time, someone once left a sentence similar to a prophecy. The sky is high and the earth is wide in the Deng Crane Tower, and the lower Crane Tower has a long history. This person had also revealed secrets for her, and taught her how to deal with the dragon slasher who renewed the dispute over the Great Tao. It seems that whether she goes or stays, she has a choice. And in the end, the man smiled and said that he really encountered the kind of hurdle he could not pass in the future. So he went to his junior brother, saying that it was Brother Qi's request. Wang Zhu felt a little irritable, took a deep breath, turned his head and looked at the two adjacent shops under Qilong Alley. The lights in the house flooded out of the shop. Even the pedestrians who did not pass, still silently illuminate the night road in the alley. She didn't like the sound of books in that school and the reason of someone, and she didn't like the kindness of the person next door to Mud Bottle Alley. I don't like the one big and one small. They have the same, it's okay. In fact, it's okay. Every yesterday never wasted today and every tomorrow is today's hope. Maybe she didn't know how to like it, so she pretended to hate it on purpose. It may be that you know certain truths but you just can't do it. Don't dare to hate your own weakness and have no choice but to hate those who can do it. Just like in the winter, a charcoal cage from someone else's house can only warm his hands for a while before returning it. Luopa Mountain, at the gate of the mountain. Today the little man who came to light the incense had a drink with Daoist Master Xianwei, and staggered across the threshold of the house. When he reached the gate of the house, the little guy couldn't help but cursed. Once again, like drilling a dog hole, crawling on the ground, crawling through the gap in the gate, patted the dust, the white snake under the command of the Chiduan mountain landmasters still waiting in the distance. As a result, I saw a scholar with an elegant appearance. He was not too old. He was in his early 30s and stood in a daze at the foot of the mountain. The boy Zhu Yi rushed all the way, blocking the middle of the mountain gate archway, and shouted, "Who are you?" Without waiting for the other party to answer, he felt that talking with someone up his head and his neck was too tired. Zhu Yi boy hurriedly turned and ran up a few steps with his hands on his hips. The little guy solemnly reminded, "You can't enter the gate without permission. Guest, if you come to find someone on the mountain, you have to report to Dao Master Xianwei first." The scholar smiled and introduced himself. "My name is Li Shixing, I come from Fulu Street over the town, and I am Li Baoping's elder brother." The incense villain was dumbfounded and trembling. What? It turned out to be the elder brother of our chief Rudder Li. Although the opponent is not in officialdom, but there are people in the opponent's court. Since the background is so big, why don't you beat the gongs and drums all the way to set off firecrackers when you go out? As soon as Zhu Yitong ran up the steps, he immediately ran down the steps and returned to the gate of the mountain. He made a big gesture and said respectfully, "The little hometown is in the Mantu Mountain Earth Temple. Now he is in the Zichengwang Temple. As an errand over there, I have to eat food. Thanks to the appreciation of the guardians of the fallen mountain Zhou, I am the right guardian of Qilong Alley. It is an honor to see Master Li here." Li Shixing smiled and said, "I have old acquaintances with Qin Shanzhu, so I don't have to disturb Dao Master Xianwei reading. I am quite familiar with Luopa Mountain and can climb on my own." Zhu Yitong immediately calculated and weighed in his heart, thinking that since he is the elder of Li Zhongruo, and is an old friend with Qin Shanzhu, he went up the mountain anonymously on the side of Xianwei, which seems not to be a bad rule. Zhu Yitong asked tentatively, "Master Li Rongshao help lead the way? Later on the climbing road, I have to give a hint to Master Li and turn around to give us a good word. Let's not talk about the general guardian of Qilong Alley at that time, and be a small rudder master who sits on the same level as Li Huai. It's not idiotic dreaming." Xianwei opened the gate and walked out in his cloak. At any rate, he was a cultivator. Xianwei still noticed the movement at the gate of the mountain. Zhu Yitong hurried to help the Master Li to introduce his identity, so that the Immortal Wei who was guarding the door would be blinded, and the flood would rush into the Dragon King Temple. Li Shixing smiled and invited, "Father Xianwei Daoist, climb the mountain together?" Xianwei quickly refused and said, "Watching at night to read, I want to go back to read. I just feel that this fresh-faced scholar is really good-natured and I just stop by in the middle of the night and even want to pull myself to climb the mountain together." Li Shixing, a Confucian student, smiled and saluted the young Taoist priest. The Taoist Xianwei accepted it calmly, only to exchange courtesy and then return to a Taoist chief. Sword of Coming Chapter 951. In the backyard of Yang's pharmacy, Sudian, whose nickname is Rouge, this woman Wufu alone, guards the empty pharmacy backyard. The younger brother Shi Lingshan returned to Taoya Ali's home. Su Dian didn't feel lonely and depressed. He got used to it when he was a child, but he felt uncomfortable when there were too many people. The pharmacy is in the style of the front shop and the back shop. The decocting and drying herbs are all in the backyard. On the other side of the main house, it is the residence of Old Man Yang. The door of the east wing is closed. Generally, only when Li Huai returns to his hometown to wander around, Old Man Yang will open the door. Only the west wing will be vacated early and given to the Sudian. There is also a utility room in the corner of the yard. There are piles of old objects of various colors, bottles and cans. The key to the room is left to Sudian. Master once told her that when Li Huai returns to his hometown he will fight with Li Huai. He greeted him saying what the guy in the room a lot of old things were left to him and he was free to sell or give away. Under the eaves on the south side opposite to the main house in the north, there is a bench. Sudian never sits on it and he is not allowed to sit there casually. She is like guarding an old shop and also helping master keep some old rules. Su Dian is a martial idiot but she is rare tonight. She just sat in a daze on a chair stepping on the edge of the brazier thinking about some past events. After finally regaining his senses, Su Dian bowed his head, stretched out his fingers, and twisted his trousers that were slightly hot on the quilt fire. The door of the pharmacy was concealed. Someone pushed in, walked through the front door and raised the curtain. The young man shouted, "Senior sister." The Su shop on the side of the wing room responded, and it was junior brother Shi Lingshan who came to visit. Shi Lingshan entered the house, moved a bench and sat beside the brazier. Su Dian smiled and said, "You are not unlucky when you ask the pharmacy for dinner." Shi Lingshan stretched out his hand to warm up the fire, deliberately pretending to be stupid. "Is there any attention to this? The house is more lively. The 4 generations are in the same house, and the ancestral home is at the gateway of Taoya Lane. They are not much poorer, but Shi Lingshan is still worried that the senior sister is alone and too deserted at the drugstore. He knew that since the death of the uncle who depended on each other, sister had no relatives in the small town. It seemed that there were no poor relatives who would like to ask a few questions on weekdays. Shi Lingshan took out a package of cakes from the New Year's Eve from his sleeve, and said with a smile, "The shopkeeper sure gave it to Qilong Alley." Su Dian hesitated for a moment and reached out to take over an oil paper wrapped pastry. "Are you really asking about supper?" On the night of the New Year's Eve, people in Fulu Street and Taoya Alley and people outside these 2 streets, one day and one place, generally do not move around each other. In the old town Fulu Street and Taoya Lane, there were 4 surnames and 10 tribes. The 4 surnames of the old town of Gaomen, Lu, Li and Zhaosong have always been headed by Lu, because before the fall of the Lu dynasty, it was the suzerain of the De Li Song, and the founding emperor of Lu was with Fu Lu. Street Lushur has inextricably linked origins. In addition, 10 tribes like Yuan, Chao and Xia all had great figures from their ancestors. After they left Liju Dongtian they all became famous. Nowadays there are the 2 surnames of the Shangzhou kingdom of the Dei court, in addition to the sword fairy Chao Shi of Nanpa Suzhou, and the heavenly monarch Xieshur of Luzhou in Beiju etc. Just talk about a Nipe Lane and there are the hermit Qin Pingon, the king Song Jisun of the Dali domain, and Guqin the direct disciple of Jing Juzhong. There is still the Jinhai Tower in Nanpa Suozhou, where the ancestral home of the sword fairy Chao Shi is stationed. In Sudian, apart from the drugstore, the only person you know in the small town in your hometown is Hu Feng, who is a few years older than her. Hu Feng's family used to run a free business. He would also often work as a part-time job with his grandfather, doing brick and tile carpentry work, or walking down the street to help sharpen his knives. But Hu Feng also left his hometown, but Hu Feng stayed here and Su Dian had nothing to talk about with him. Shi Lingshan smiled and said, "Guess who I saw in Qilong Lane just now?" Su Dian was silent, chewing the cakes, and it was not worth making a fuss about anyone he saw anyway. Years ago there was often a shaggy yellow-faced little girl in Qilong Alley. She pretended to pass by that Qilong Alley accidentally. She walked very slowly, sniffing her nose gently, smelling the scent of pastries, and the girl's belly grew stronger. Growing hungry. The delicious pastries that I dreamed of when I was young, as well as the colorful fabrics in the cloth shop, once made the hungry girl feel that it is the most remote good thing in the world, but when I grow up I have it on hand. With money, I don't know why, but I don't even think about it at all. Shi Lingshan said. I took a look at her from a distance like Wang Zhu in Qilong Lane. He used to be a small town close at hand, but now he is a big figure far away. Su Dian just snorted. Anyway, she is not from the same group. She is not interested in the wealth and prosperity of these fellow villagers. Nowadays, Old Longzhou and Xinchuzhou are recognized as the land of hidden dragons and crouching tigers on one continent. From the perspective of Su Dian, they are nothing compared to the past. The first group of foreigners bought the mountain fairy house on the top of the mountain in the mountains to the west. As long as they didn't resell at a low price in the middle, they are now regarded as a cornucopia of wealth. Later, some monks who were well informed and heard the news came to buy the ancestral homes in the small town with the local people, or bought the snake stones picked up from the dragon's beard at a high price, embedded in the walls. The bronze mirrors I wore, as well as old objects such as ancient coins and porcelain, seemed to overnight, all the worthless things became extremely precious, and the only ones that became worthless were the ones that had been accumulated by ancestors and ancestors. Broken silver or the gold and silver jewelry used by every household to press the bottom of the box. Nowadays, many chi practitioners who are incognito here in the small town live in the simplest form all year round, and use those dilapidated houses as a dojo for spiritual practice. Their household registration and mountain genealogy are secretly under the management of the Longquan County Kiln Affairs Supervision Bureau. As for the Huaihuang County government, they are still not clear about the identity and background of these mountain gods. Anyway, no one has caused trouble. Compared with ordinary county towns, it's a place where the road is not lost so that the county government affairs are so clear and bright. They are all excellent test words in the state city every year. After all, there is not even a thief who broke the wall, let alone the kind of trivial disputes between the parents. Heaven and earth auras, mountains and waters, magic weapons, these foreign monks who are sharp-eyed and quick to start have indeed earned them. Just to say one thing, someone once went to the sky to hand fists with the ancient gods who crossed the border and brought a few heavy golden rains to Aquarius. Although almost all of them were taken by the monarch of Beiyue Weishan, even though it seemed to be from the Piyun mountain family prophet, but Weibo is a mountain monarch on a continent after all. The entire Beiyue jurisdiction rises with the tide. The mountains, waters, and the fortunes become strong, and the heaven and earth will become more aura. The cultivators who live in Huaihuang County and the mountains to the west, eat after eating xiaoyinlu she was full. Over the past 2 decades, monks have quietly broken the border from time to time. Shi Lingshan asked casually, Senior sister, how many people are there in our department? According to their generations, the genealogy could not be simpler. Anyway, there is a master who teaches boxing. On the bright side, Su Dian and Xianxia, there are 2 seniors above them, but Li Er and Jing Dafeng, a dragger. I went to Beiju Luzhou and one went to Wuxia World. As to whether there are any other brothers and sisters, it has always been a mystery. Old Man Yang didn't like to mention this. Shi Lingshan once asked and ended up receiving a screaming curse. Old Man Yang has always been like this, or he would not speak at all, or he would talk horribly as soon as he opened his mouth. I want to go outside to recognize my brother. Do you want to hold a stinky foot, or is the Taoya Lane Shurjia hungry for you, and you have to go to another house to ask for a bite of hot shit? After that, Shi Lingshan didn't dare to ask any more questions. Su Dian thought for a while and said, How many people are there? There are a few people on the master's genealogy. I don't know how many are now alive. But apart from Li and Jing, there are indeed others. Shi Lingshan raised his head, full of curiosity. Su Dian shook his head and said, I know the names of the 2 senior brothers and sisters, but the master didn't say whether you can reveal their identities, so don't ask more. The 2 seniors and younger brothers in the room have very different temperaments. From Shi Lingshan's point of view, the master didn't say that it was impossible, that's okay. But on the side of senior sister Su Dian, the master didn't say yes, just not. Su Dian suddenly said, I plan to follow master's instructions. After this year, when Li Huai comes back and tells him something, I will go out for a long trip. Shi Lingshan asked, Where are the senior sisters going? How far is the journey? Is it the ruins of an ancient battlefield in another continent? He and senior sister haven't left Aquarius Island yet. The younger generation in the town seems to like to travel far more than the other. Su Dian knew that the younger brother had misunderstood and explained, I plan to practice alone this time, so I won't take you. Sure, Lingshan was disappointed but did not entangle her because she knew the temper of the senior sister. She was very angry and what she believed would not be changed. Su Dian rarely has a smiling face. I will meet you next time, please drink. Sure, Lingshan just cared about being happy, smiling stupidly. It would be even better to invite others to have a wedding wine. But the young man didn't notice that the senior sister, with her head down, her charming face illuminated by the charcoal fire, was a little sad between her eyebrows. One is optimistic, the other is pessimistic. In the eyes of the former, all travels are for the day of reunion. From the latter's perspective, all encounters are a preparation for parting. This trip to go out to experience. When Su Dian has entered the far travel realm here in Howren world, she will go to find a senior named Xiaxinan. The other party is far away in the Qingming world. According to Master Xia, Brother Xia is doing well now, but he has changed his name and is no longer called Xiaxinan. Just listening to Master's tone, Su Dian could guess that Brother Xia had already saved a lot of family business in that world. Every time Master talks about these apprentices, they usually have a good face. Even if they mention Li Er, who is already an end martial artist, there is no smile. The Master left a few oral messages to the unmasked senior Brother Xia, and asked Su Dian to help. The general idea is to let Xiaxinan see her junior sister Su Dian, and teach her boxing and swordsmanship similarly to teaching her on behalf of the teacher, and then wait for Su Dian to reach the top of the mountain, and then help the junior sister build a school over there, take root and become self-reliant. After that, the two sides will go their own way and do not reveal the relationship between the two sides. As for how Su Dian would go to the Qingming world and where to find Brother Xia, Master had already arranged it. Shi Lingshan asked curiously, Sister, what is the origin of that Li Huai? It is said that the young hermit once gave Li Huai a nickname. Then in this small town, Li Huai really has the only one who can live up to it. Su Dian shook his head and said, according to Xianxia's statement, Li Huai himself has no background, just the most common mortal with naked eyes. However, their master really treated Li Huai as his grandson. It's just that this kind of thing is not envious. Shi Lingshan sat on the side of the house for about half an hour, and left Su Dian delivered to the door of the drugstore. When the figure of the younger brother disappeared at the corner of the street, she closed the door and returned to the backyard, staring blankly. The bench under the eaves. Senior brother Jing Dafeng said that this long bench has been kept here for many years and no one is older than it. The last time I saw Master, the old man was still sitting on the steps outside the main house, holding a dry tobacco rod, swallowing clouds and fog. The Master said something that Su Dian could not understand. The old man knocked lightly on the steps with the dry tobacco rod, then lifted the dry tobacco rod, pointed to the bench and said that the wooden bench was us. Seeing Su Dian hesitating to speak, the old man said that if there is a chance in the future, if you meet there in the Qingming world, you can ask that person and he will definitely know the answer. What does a wooden stool have to do with us? Su Dian was puzzled. A woman with a young appearance, beautiful temples and graceful posture, like a fish swimming in the Dragon Beard River. As a local river god, she was patrolling her own territory. She was accompanied by a few children-like servants of the river god water mansion. Among the children with immature faces, there were boys and girls. In fact, except for their pale and colorless faces, they are more permeating, and in addition their outfits, looks and childish voices are no different from those of the city children on the shore. Swinging and playing with the goddess of the river, although they are all water ghosts, they have long been used to the water, but occasionally there will be a look like choking water with hands and feet shaking and fluttering, just like a child who is not good at water drowning in the sun. Generally, it will return to normal soon, and then make faces with people of the same age around you as if you all think this is an interesting thing. Because tonight is New Year's Eve, according to the custom, the river god empress gave this group of little attendants a red envelope. The coins in the red paper envelope were all rusty copper coins that were left in the stream in the early years. No way, my own river empress is a famous thrifty housekeeper. In short, she is stingy. Malanhua, the orthodox water of Longshu River in the Dali court, still stopped at the waterfall at the border of Longshu River and Tiefu River, and then went upstream, passing by the blacksmith shop on the Longshu River. Taking advantage of the fact that the shop is now empty, she poked her head out of the water and glanced at it. I changed 3 masters one after another. The first was Master Ruan, an unbelievable blacksmith who turned out to be the last military sage to sit in Liju Cave, born in Fengxue Temple. Later it was Ruan Qiong's apprentice Su Xiaoqiao. A woman Jianxiu who lacked a thumb on her right hand, followed by Lu Xianying, and a woman from the countryside who looked at her head was not very bright, Yu Qianyue. Now in the Longquan Jianzong, the monarch Weibo personally helped to migrate several hills including the ancestral mountain Xianxia mountain. They moved to the north with their brains, which is considered to be a complete land lease settlement with the Lizhu cave of the past. Every time she swam over the stone arch bridge where the bridge corridor was torn down by the Song family of Dali, and there was no old sword hanging on it, she would be extremely frightened. Swim quickly across the stone arch bridge and came to a deep pool with a blue stone cliff. Malinhua stopped and stood in the water. Several children who were too late to stop bumped into each other lightly, and after chirping and complaining, there was another burst of laughter. The old woman in Xinghua Lane was visited by a female immortal teacher for revenge. One of the old Ma granny died accidentally, but because of a blessing in disguise, the old man Yang gathered his ghosts and was able to serve as a river woman. He gradually recovered his appearance as if, the more I live the more I go back, and his appearance is getting younger and younger. This Longshu River was originally a stream. After the Tiefu River rose from the river to the river, the Longshu River, which was the upstream and source, followed the trend to become a river. And she also became a river from a river woman and was promoted inexplicably. It's just that nearly 30 years have passed and finally there is a temple by the river where there is a shelter, but there is still no statues in the temple, not even an incense burner. How could there be such a shabby and distressed river empress? But Ma Lanhua didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction. Year after year she held her finger and said that her life is like a year, which is not an exaggeration. She asked a well-connected landlord to help inquire about the news. On the Zhouqing side, there are still a few elders who knew the name Ma Lanhua and recognized her appearance when she was young. It is said that there are only 2 old folks from the same generation and age left over there now. The more so, the more Ma Lanhua is in awe of the old man Yang in the drugstore, because if there is no accident he will only wait for the 30-year deadline. When they arrive, the 2 old people in Zhouqing will die. The 6 women of the 3 aunts and 6 women accounted for half of them. The masters who pretended to be fools, the matchmakers who acted as matchmakers, the stable women who gave birth to the women, and the Ma Lanhua of Xinghua Lane were all served. As a result, there was another river Pa. Ma Lanhua sighed faintly. She appeared in the deep green pool, stepped on the water, and the river spread to the stone cliff on its own. So she went up, sat on the blue stone cliff, and took out a handful of white jade from her sleeve. Comb a blue silk, ready to change a bun today. The little guys followed the goddess of water, jumped out of the water, gathered on the cliff, ran around the stone cliff and started to riotously happily. Under normal circumstances, Malinhua will never allow them to go ashore. Not to mention that during the day the sun is like fire, and any exposure to the sun will cause the ghosts to fly away even at night. What's more, they dare not cross the border without authorization, otherwise they will collide with the Yangjian casually, and the yin and yang will be agitated. If they can't fight they will die. Ma Lanhua looked at these carefree children and sighed. She squeezed out a smiling face with a soft voice instructing a few words of chariots. Don't go away, be honest, don't go to the shore or you will have to go home. Fa waited on the board. In fact, their young life on the shore is not very big. After they become ghosts, they are like falling into a kind of weird imaginary age. They grow slowly. To be precise, it is difficult to grow up, unlike the children in the market. Sprinting so fast, it seems that in the blink of an eye, you will change from a child to a teenage girl and soon you will reach the age of marriage and get married and start a business and have your own children and then become very light sleepers. The old man who is used to getting up early, one day slept without opening his eyes. Ma Lanhua raised her head and looked into the distance. In the middle of the night she would feel burnt when she glanced at Fayin Mountain from a distance. The Dali imperial court first established 3 mountain temples. And Piyun Mountain is the temple of the mountain monarch, which is unattainable. On the southernmost Luapa Mountain, there used to be a mountain who was ridiculed by his colleagues as the Golden Head Mountain God. He was on duty there. There is also a mountain shrine of high standards on the top of the mountain. It is a pity that it was miserable in those years. The mountain shrines and temples are about to become the family temple of the orphan in Nipping Lane. What kind of incense can there be? Malinhua knew that Song Yuzhong of the Golden Head Mountain had a long history. He had been a kiln supervisor for many years during his lifetime. In those years when there was no county government in the town, he was the only official. The former superintendent Zhou Xian at a young age became a servant of Dai after he resigned. On the other hand, Governor Song made Lord Song. A good person had no life and he could not keep up with the good time. As for the mountain temple built on the side of Fengliang Mountain, because the top of the mountain is located at the northernmost part of the mountains, it is closest to the prosperous boundary of the same city as the prefecture and county office. The temple incense has always been very prosperous. Clouds, there is an endless stream of incense burning up the mountain. On the 15th day of the Lunar New Year, the temple fairs on the mountainside and the top of the mountain are even more lively and enviable by the colleagues of the Xianxia officialdom. The main road of the incense-burning shrine is wide and flat like an official on Daoist road. There are tea houses, wine shops and inn shops along the way. A landlord in Fengliang Mountain who is familiar with Ma Lanhua is an old and dishonest thing, but he dare not toss her up. But every time he meets old people always have to change the way to say a few bad words like a mouth. If you don't take advantage of it you will die. And the top boss of the landlord was the mountain master of Fengliang Mountain. With the face of the statue, Malanhua vaguely recognized that he was the one who opened a funeral shop in the small town before. Look at the style of the family now. Looking at the situation of my temple, people are more popular than others. To be honest, when the mountain was young he even asked people to marry him. It's just that for some reason when she was still Hepa, the other party would still be close to the Longxi River from time to time and meet each other, but it didn't take long before she was estranged. I'm so angry with Ma Lanhua. My old lady is just asking you to inquire about your grandson. Isn't she reluctant to help with this little thing? In this Longxi River the head boss is Yang Hua, the of water in the Tiefu River downstream. It is said that she is the person next to the Empress Dowager of Dai. Her face is so cold that Malanhua doesn't dare to get close at all. She was also trembling. When she met those subordinates of the Shuifu who always had their eyes above the top, Malanhua only dared to make up for a smile and never dared to put on airs. You must lose your official status. Therefore Malanhua can only speculate about what happened outside the state through the official Shanshui official residence reports from the Zichengwang temple. According to the promise made by the old man Yang, after 30 years have passed, the old man in the small town who knows her young appearance and identity is almost gone. She can erect a statue of God, enjoy the incense and then temper her golden body. However, Malanhua is both looking forward to it and worrying about it. The marriage between the Tiefu River and the Yuye River Water Temple is very effective. The Mantu Mountain Earth Temple is also very famous, and Song Duzaoping is also very famous. I went to Chiduan Mountain and Fengliang Mountain, these two mountain temples. It seems that scholars are asking for a sign and wishing, hoping for the success of the imperial examination and cultural protection. The effect is quite good, so until now Malanhua has not thought of a way. In the future, even if a statue of it is erected, where does the incense come from? If you want to talk about suppressing water transport, it will be her turn. Being in the state boundary, there is no shortage of rivers and rivers. Malanhua brushed her hair and sighed. On this cratered blue stone cliff, children from the former small town who came here to fish in the mallard waters all have their own seats that they have chosen. After becoming of mountains and rivers, the vision of those ordinary masters in the sun is completely different. Located at the border between the mountain and the small town to the west, the humble Jinju Mountain turned out to be a Liju. The Dragon Beard River at the feet of Malanhua is a veritable dragon beard, so there were so many priceless serpentine stones in the water that year. As for the other dragon's beard, it is the main street of the town. There are crab shops, iron lock wells and old locust trees lined up in the street. They spread all the way to the east, stopping at the east fence gate. The young bachelor, Jing Dafeng the janitor, does not know where he died now, leaving only an unoccupied yellow mud house. There is a literary saying that it is called the tiger's dragon plate, as if those dragon kiln mouths were built on the body of this dragon. In fact, over the years Ma Lanhua has been afraid that the thin and weak girl in Ni Ping Alley will come to her to turn over the old accounts. After all, I used to carry water from the iron lock well, and every time I saw the lowly maid next to this Song governor's illegitimate son, Malanhua was often the picky auntie, and she did say something unacceptable back then. After all, the widows in Nipe Alley and the orphan, no matter how poor they are not cheap. No matter how poor they are, they have an innocent identity, but this little girl with a weird name is living well and richly. The woman in the small town back then, let alone point to Jigue anyway. As long as you quarrel and scold the street, no matter who you are, you can always pick out a bunch of faults and say a few words that disturb your heart and spine. For example, what's wrong with how many stinky money you have in your family? Do you have a cub now? Be careful to cut off the incense from your ancestors. In the future, who the money will go to is not just a matter of two things. It's too ordinary. Wait until one party can't say anything, then scratch his hair and scratch his face. Just talk about bickering, don't talk about hands-on. So the Ma in Xinghua Lane, the Gu family widow in Ni Ping Alley, the Li family wife in the west of the town, and the wine seller Huang Ernyang are all first-class masters. This simple folk customs, Ruan Taijiang, Lu Qin who set up a fortune-telling booth, and Chao Duzhao who is drunk every day. These outsiders have all personally experienced it. In fact, all those who have been in contact with the younger generation in the town, no matter what their status, realm, or more or less, will have similar feelings. Just talk about the Confucian temple discussion. Someone's words gave two resounding new nicknames for the savage co-master Firen and Wen Hei's close disciples. To a mountain lies in the saint, and the Jiaxian account loses the saint who has never won. The young hermit also threatened to give away the private seals carved by one of the two great heroes in the world. No regrets, heart to Hauran. It is a pity that the wild big monsters who are qualified to participate in the discussion of Tuyue Mountain increasingly feel that the young hermit is not his own family. Ma Lanhua rubbed her cheeks. I was slapped hard by the little lady with sharp teeth. She took out several old Xianxia debayos from her sleeves. The only thing in common was that there was news about her grandson on the debao. In fact, she had long been so familiar with the contents of the above, and she had memorized them back and forth. These years are idle and idle. The River Empress began to change the way to learn a few more words. And this kind of Xianxia official diaries were issued from the Zhou Qinghuang temple. Basically, there will be 2 or 3 letters every quarter. Qinghuang Yi Zhangping will send the Yin Ming subordinates to the county city gods and the Xianxia gods at all levels. This makes Ma Lanhua especially proud. When Hepa was a year-round, there were not many mansion reports. When he was promoted to the river god, his official status was equal to the Qinglu of the Dali Xianxia officialdom. Suddenly the number doubled. Compared with the above, there is more than the below. To live a life, people go to high places and the water flows down and look up at those who are living well. This is a hope for life. If you look down at the things that are not as good as you, your heart will be calm. The woman forgot who said a word. People live hard and deceive themselves, it is hope. Lu Yen took Xiaomao and Qing Tong along the corridor and went elsewhere, deliberately letting the 2 scholars of very different ages talk about housekeeping. The most sage master smiled and asked, Qin Pingan, how did you think of eating books? Qin Pingan was stunned, but soon figured out that the so-called eating a book refers to practicing characters. Qin Pingan explained, before I was at the city head, there was really nothing to do. It just so happened that Li Zhen, who was at the city head next door, lost this Xianxia travels to me and it came in handy. The holy master smiled and said, it's a coincidence and a coincidence just right. Qin Pingan raised his head and glanced at the sky. The most holy master obviously meant something. If it hadn't been for refining all the text of the landscape travel notes, and some accident, even if Qin Pingan had been standing at the head of the city for 10,000 years, he would never have thought of what his brother Cui Yang would do. Probably just like Li Zhen later slandered, only those who have a brain disease can talk to fellows who have a brain disease, and some can make sense and understand. The most sage master's thoughts drifted away, remembering a face. They were all in the ancient sword repair camp. The previous observation of Jianxiu was not that Liz Hen talkative, but a well-known boring gourd who almost didn't talk to anyone. Every time he discussed secretly, he hid in a corner or stood beside Chen Qingdu. Did not say a word from beginning to end. However, if you don't do anything, you can't say a complete victory. Once you are determined to challenge the sword with others, at least you can guarantee your invincibility. It can even be said to a certain extent that the contemplation of the whole life seems to be living for others, practicing swords and handing swords for the overall situation. So contemplation is the most uncomfortable one among all sword repairs. On the other hand, the dragon monarch of the same generation of sword repairers simply likes to ask people about the sword, as if winning or losing does not matter. Every time he encounters a war, he does not care about life and death, and is far more unrestrained than the observation of, don't dare to die casually. The 3 criminal sword repair leaders, Qin Qingdu, Guanzhao, Longjun, are the creators of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It wasn't long before they had just gained a firm foothold, and under the leadership of Qin Qingdu, the three sword repairmen traveled together. That far-reaching Wenjian Tuotian successfully blocked the great ancestor Tuotian, who was only half a step away. As the first co-lord of the barbaric world, the latter failed to refine a world of good time, place and harmony. 15th realm. And the three of Qin Qingdu also paid an extremely painful price. Qin Qingdu's natal flying sword, Duckweed, completely shattered and had to join the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Qin Qing also lost hope of entering the 15th realm. Otherwise, according to Dao ancestors' calculation, as long as Qin Qingdu is given 2,000 or 3,000 years of sword refining time, he will have the opportunity to become the 15th level pure sword repair of the unprecedented person, no one behind. Unprecedented because the sword repairmen who were expected to be in this state, under the suppression of the ancient gods, all died on the way. There is no one to come once Qin Qing is in this realm. It is like a single person monopolizing the entire kendo, standing on a single plank bridge, and there is no way to go. The most sage master once took the ceremonial saint and went to the Jianqi Great Wall to persuade Qin Qingdu, but the persuasion was to no avail. Qin Qing blocked the two students back with just 2 sentences. We Jianxiu don't have to do the right thing. You scholars, remember to keep your promises. Originally, Lord Long was extremely dissatisfied with Jianxiu becoming a criminal. Therefore, during that long journey, Lord Long never thought of returning to the Great Wall of Jianqi alive. He is going to be a pure sword repairer, not a tortured refugee from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Long Jun wants to use a vigorous way to close the curtain on his life. Therefore, after death, whether it was the Great Wall of Sword Qi or Qin Qingdu, an old friend who used to fight side by side, Long Jun had not owed anything. Long Jun's natal flying sword is named Daxu Immortal Tomb. The Battle of Mountaineering, plus the senior sword repair on the earth before the mountaineering, died without a place to be buried. Countless, his Dragon King can use his life flying sword as a tomb. It is considered a blessing. And Guanzhao has a more special natal flying sword. In the 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, the sword repairs that were targeted by the ancient gods most were the observation of having a natal flying sword, the long river of time, not even one of them. Therefore, the journey to observe the Taoism is the most bumpy and dangerous. For the sword repairs who observe and protect the Tao, there is an endless stream. The most sage master put away his thoughts and asked, if it is to trace the origin, the mountain has the source of the dragon and the water. Qin Pingon said, Mr. Li talked to Xianxia back then. Although it was an observer, I kept remembering it since then. Li Shixing on Falu Street once went to Niping Alley to find Qin Pingon. At that time it was the first time for Qin Pingon to return from a long trip. There were children in Tsing-yi and girls in pink skirts around him. That time, Li Shixing taught a boy in Tsing-yi who was accustomed to speaking without closing the door. The principle is that all the words in the world are powerful. Words and words are connected to form a sentence. The sentence is written in succession and the great road is in it. Qin Ling didn't take this sentence seriously. His left ear went in and his right ear went out. But Qin Pingon has a deep memory. Although he was not sealed on the bamboo slips later, he still kept it in his heart. After that, Xianxia took the courage and asked the scholar a question that she had puzzled for a long time. Why did she suddenly seem to be unable to recognize a certain word when she was studying, and she felt strange? Li Shixing smiled and gave the answer, saying that it was because the text in the book was secretly borrowed by some saints at some point. At that time, the little Nuanshu obviously did not believe in this kind of gods and Taoism, so she directly refuted Mr. Li, and in the eyes of a certain bystander, it was to teach Mr. Li a lesson. This is a rare scene. After that, Chao Jun's ancestral home was repaired at Nanpasuozhou in Niping Alley, and he casually used the excuse of breaking ground on Tai Sui Head to find trouble with Qin Pinyin. As a result, this last worshipper of Xindu Mountain that time met Li Shixing, who took the initiative to take the initiative, and met in a narrow lane in the alley. One is just a Qi practitioner in the Sevuing realm, and the other is a sword repairman who claims to be between 8 and 9. Chao Jun made this weird statement because his golden core realm was not worthy of the name at that time, because the sword heart was broken. A Taoist heart is sparse, and the mental scene is reduced to a pond full of withered lotus. You must know that before the sword heart collapsed, Chao Jun was in Nanpasuozhou with good sword practice skills, and he was the second to none sword fairy embryo. It's just a sword repairer who is still in the golden core realm, even if it is half-slapped, no matter how much paper and bamboo sticks are stuck, and even on the side of a sixth realm cultivator, no matter how hard he puts his sword, he still has a futile end. In that battle, Qin Pingon only took a general look at that time. As his vision became wider and wider, especially after he became a sword repairman, he felt more and more unusual. A chi trainer who is not a sword repairer facing a sword repairer who asks the sword, and the realm is lower than the opponent, can he win the game? Back then, Li Zixing's calm and leisurely, seemingly very easy-to-handle sword-picking was like handing over to the future sword repairer Qin Pinyin, without a word of reason. Since the sword repair one sword can break 10,000 magic. The method of cracking is very simple. You only need to accumulate 10,001 methods. In the years to come, Qin Pingon feels that the two games closest to Li Zixing's realm, once near the hut at the head of the Jianqi Great Wall, and once on the battlefield outside the city. Chaosis boxing method. Excellent swordsmanship. Not only their unexplored prophet who anticipated the enemy's first opportunity, was very similar to Li Zixing's skills at the time, but also had a kind of aura and situation emanating from Chao Ci and Fei Ran. There is no need for formations, magical powers, flying swords, and no blessings of any foreign objects at all to be able to become a small world on its own. Besides the fight, there are still two people who will give Qin Pinyin this feeling. Senior Cui, who teaches boxing for himself on the second floor of the bamboo house in Luopa Mountain, and Cui Dongshan, who is sitting in front of the chessboard and preparing to make a move. Cultivators say that the human body is small, but these few as if they themselves are the big world. The most sage master remembered that a serious Xingyi boy in the small town had kindly advised Dao Zhu to say that the name Tao Zhu is too big, so it is better to change the name. The most sage master couldn't help but laugh, jokingly said, "Your fellow Jingqing Daoist is a bit Taoist." Feeling helpless, Qin Pingon laughed at himself. It looks like he invited a young ancestor home. But when he said this, the young mountain master's eyes were gentle. In Luopa Mountain, even if Qin Pingon is used to shaking his hands as the shopkeeper, as long as he returns home every time, there is no gossip that the young mountain owner does not know. On the surface, all the credit is for the millet grains. In fact, Qin Lingjun is also a behind-the-scenes hero who can't be underestimated. He is a diligent patrolling of the mountains and the other likes to hang out. He can't hide what he sees and hears. The most sage master said, Qin Lingjun first went to Luzhou in Beiju to take a trip. He felt that he had made a mistake. It seemed that he didn't want to hide something, but he wanted to return to his hometown earlier. A boulder is settled. You must know that most people make mistakes no matter how big or small. They always hope that they don't know the sky and the earth, and it's best if they don't know it. This is human nature. Qin Pingon was puzzled, and I don't know why the Holy Master would talk about Qin Lingjun. The Holy Master asked, Qin Lingjun either wants face, but on your side he seems to be totally indifferent to face. Do you know why? Qin Pingon really hadn't thought about this. He thought about it and tentatively replied, because I walked through Shujian Lake. All the people in Laobaitian, monks or martial arts, have a tacit understanding, and seem to deliberately bypass the lake of scriptures and never touch this topic. The more flawless the person, the greater the invisible pressure that others get along with. Especially Qin Pingon, a generation with subtle thoughts, and since childhood, the orphans of Ni Ping Alley have been tirelessly pursuing the word errorlessness all their lives. A person who drinks a lot but has never been drunk is terrible. It is precisely because of the regrets and faults on the road of life that it is those unknown consciences that Qin Pinyin has become a drunk person who rarely gets drunk, but is a good drinker after all. The most sage master said, in addition there is another intention. Cui Yang knows that the situation is urgent and it is too late to use a relatively gentle method. Use other things to fill this huge hole. As for whether you use conscience, guilt, or use some kind of more harmonious knowledge, no matter what it is, there is a place to go. The most sage Xianxia deliberately said it implicitly. In fact, Cui Yang seems to have used a method that is the opposite of checking for leaks and filling vacancies. Within the peace of mind, a waterless heart lake was forcibly carved out. As for sewing, it depends on you. Qin Pinyin difficult? Zephyr. Otherwise, Qin Pingan's original Taoism cannot bear that divine nature. To be precise, Qin Pingon, whose two lines of good and evil in his heart are extremely close together, is too in line with the divine. The more you practice, the more you ascend. The closer to the divine, this is an involuntary general trend. Just as the most sage master used a whisk to draw circles and discuss the Tao, he deliberately asked Qin Pingon about several possibilities in the end, but Qin Pingon could not answer. In the view of the most sacred master, one carelessness is very likely to have only one result. The thoroughgoing to the sky and occupying the ruins of the old heavenly court, on the contrary, lost to Qin Pingon, who seemed to remain in the world and lost the first mover, because the divinity of the latter becomes more pure. Isn't the old man Yang in the drugstore gambling? And will not lose. Regardless of Qin Pingon, who has all the divine nature at the gaming table, regardless of whether Qin Ping's tug-of-war between humanity and divinity is winning or losing, in the eyes of old man Yang, it is always a matter of left hand in and right hand out. That one. The ancestor of the male earth immortal in the past, one of the 12 high-ranking gods, holding a soaring young boy Tianjun in his hand, waiting for 10,000 years, it is not a waste of work. That's why Cui Yang made an early move. Then one day Qin Pingon, after he really became the one, succeeded in consolidating the divinity of all the people struggling in the entire Dewdrop Cave, and became the last person left on the gaming table, most of the pure divinity. Even if it is originally uncontrollable, the big deal is that the divinity falls like a waterfall falling from the sky, permeating the heart into the lake, discussing things, not only saving worry and effort discussing people but also beneficial to practice. The Holy Master suddenly asked again, "Have you ever thought about why Cui Dongshan is afraid of Li Baoping? Back when you went to the Desui Academy to study, Cui Dongshan was on the side of the little girl in the red cotton-padded jacket." Qin Pingon was stunned on the spot, another question that seemed to have never been pondered. Then Qin Pingon quickly became complicated. The second time I traveled to the Great Wall of Sword Qi and reunited with my seniors there. In fact, at the earliest, one didn't recognize the little junior and the other didn't think he was his senior. However, Qin Pingon was the most complicated with Cui Yang, the big brother of deceiving the master and destroying the ancestor. Because Li Baoping and Beiping Zhu are in a relationship of mutual weal and good fortune and misfortune, who do you think is the work of peaches on behalf of Li Zheng? The most sage master said in a word. By Yujing masters, the name of the instructor has lofty ambitions and transforms into 3 cleansings. It must be in 3 identities and finally truly integrate the 3 teachings. Li Shixing in Lu Street is a Confucian student. Cui Yang is right. Li Shixing knows the truth and will still protect the stability of his sister Li Baoping. Li Shixing chooses this way, so what about Bai Yujing or even Qingming world? Do you believe it or not? The battle in Aquarius Island was unfavorable, unable to defend Dadu and the accompany capital. Dali Iron Cavaliers had to retreat to the northern capital. Li Baoping had a good or bad situation. Li Shixing would directly break the border all the way and return to the 14th realm in one day, choosing to face it directly. Show me? At that time, what choice would junior brother Yu Dou and Lu Chen make? Is it even possible for Dao Zhu to make an exception for the first disciple who has the most high hopes? Uncertain. The Holy Master said slowly, but Cui Yang only needs to have this, not necessarily, it's enough. So, when Qi Jingchun said Theta gentlemen can deceive others, it was not only for you, the younger brother, but also for the older brother Cui Yang. I hope that the latter's knowledge of work will not go too far. It's a pity that Cui Yang doesn't listen. If he says close to humanity, I really can't blame him. For someone who doesn't leave himself a retreat, we can ask Cui Yang more. What to do? After holding both hands, the most sage master looked up at the sky. A former Haoran Jiaxing, once wild and thorough, is now the new Lord of Heaven. With one's own power, the patriarch of the 3 teachings had to work together to deal with it. Qin Pingon was silent for a long time and asked, "Isn't it? Dao ancestor can't do it?" The Holy Master shook his head and said, "It's really not even possible. Some things are extremely complicated. If the avenue deduces one thing, it will only evolve hundreds or thousands of roads to the end. No matter how many, it will not be difficult, so just casually. A cultivator of the upper 5 realms can go to be a house of yin and yang. The difficulty lies in the fact that when the heart of the people moves, the heart of the sky moves. For example, just talk about things like Feng Yuanshao in the colorful world. Of course, Daozu can be counted as her appearance. Assuming that Daoist's Sayajiazi is angry and must target her, then Daozu is equal to contending with the entire colorful avenue. After all, it's not the same thing as the soldier's ancestor. But if there are a few of us, each of them transforms into a world, and only says that we are in our own territory, of course it would be considered exhaustive. I don't think it's very interesting. Daozu thinks that knowing the world will be self-righteous. The Buddha thinks that all generations of Buddhas are his own business. Anyway, as the earliest Taoist in the world, we all feel that Tao is in the world. A flower suddenly appeared in front of Qin Pingon. The vision disappeared in a flash and the Taoist heart shook. When he stared intently again, there was no trace. Just now, I seemed to see a legendary Kirin passing by. The most sage master looked calm and smiled freely. 3 cups lead to the road and 1 fight is natural. Frozen, let's start a pot of wine. Sword of Coming Chapter 952. The state town in the prefecture and the county town in Longquan County are in the same city, and it is naturally more prosperous than the Hongzhou town in the place where the 3 rivers meet. After returning to her hometown, a woman who has been pampered and treated with grace, if she only looks at her face, put aside the crow's feet in the corners of her eyes, she looks at her in her 30s and praises her as a half-year-old mistress. A little bit of conscience. If she is not someone who knows her roots, she will mistake her for a wealthy woman from Fulu Street. There are ground dragons in the house, so wherever you need a brazier by your feet, you can save even the charcoal cage in your hand. In the early years when she returned to her hometown from Xianxia Island, Shujian Lake, she bought a lot of houses directly on the Zhouqing side. Facts have proved that the big money spent on biting her teeth in the past did not make a lot of money, but made a lot of profits. The rent is a large sum of money in the account. Of course, she hadn't looked down on the gold and silver for a long time, and the fairy money was the money. In recent years, the women went to the house in Huaihuang County, mostly to worship their ancestors during the Qingming festival, and then went back to Nipping Lane to sit for a while. All her thoughts are still on the side of the new home, such as in the house. Everything has to be set up, and there must be a distinction between inferiority and inferiority in order to manage the family well. There is the Xinjia Inn on the mountain in Zhouqing, and she will ask the housekeeper to go there regularly to buy the Shanshui Dibao. This is not a small amount of expense. After all the money spent is immortal money, but the woman does not have the slightest pain. When she wants to inquire about the Middle-earth Shenzhou, especially the Baidi city, she can also show her own high-door identity. Inside the house, the woman took a few maids to chat about the housework, sat around the stove at night, warmed a pot of glutinous rice, fermented rice. Each had a drink, and the flowers were filled with broken mouths. A plump maid bowed her head and took a sip of the fermented wine and smiled sweetly. Madam, with the young master's cultivation aptitude, coupled with the identity of the young Beidasheng descendant, it will not be difficult to return to his hometown in the future and establish a sect. At that time, the woman brought a few personal servant girls from Hengbo Mansion on Xianxia Island. They are also considered to be in the countryside here. Today I followed my wife to post spring festival couplets, burn incense to invite the door god, invite the kitchen god, etc. The wife's hometown is more elaborate. Just practice makes perfect. Year after year they get used to it. Just like tomorrow is the first day of the first lunar month, I have to follow my wife to the mountain temple on the Fengliang mountain to burn incense. Just moving to Zhouqing, my wife will leave on New Year's Eve and hurry up early to burn the New Year's hearth. Xiang even wanted to stay at the temple overnight, but since the last time Gukin went back to his hometown and had a chat with his wife, the wife didn't deliberately fight for the first incense, saying that my family Gukin talked about it. According to Buddhism, the so-called the first incense is 2 kinds of sayings. One is sincere and sincere. The incense is 1 petal regardless of whether it is in the temple or at home, where the incense is burned is the same, and the other is pious to the Buddha, so every time you worship the incense, it is I'm burning my first incense so I don't have to fight with others. The woman smiled and said, Shao Qin is just one of the direct disciples of City Lord Zheng. Even if Baidi City establishes the next sect, according to the report, most of it will be in Fuyao Island and will not come to our Aquarius Island. Over the years, through the mountain residence newspaper of the Xinjia Inn, the woman has learned a lot about the world, and the residence newspaper of the inn is said to have a wider road than the Zhouqing Huang temple. The woman suddenly looked regretful and said, It's just suffering for you. Who would have expected that a true realm sect would emerge from Shujian Lake? If you didn't follow me here back then, you might already belong to the sect today. The genealogy is a fairy, and when I go out I have to be called a fairy. It's like now, I can only nest in such a palm-sized house and give me a maid. The woman knows that these cultivators in the immortal mansion with the initials of the ancestor put their names on the golden and jade genealogy. It can be called a matter of smoke from the ancestral tomb. There were originally two taboos in the mansion. One was Zhou Xian and the other was Mr. Chen. No one can talk in one place. Never thought that Madame tonight would actually take the initiative to chat about Zhou Xian. The two close-fitting servant girls in the room looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. The relatively thin servant girl immediately smiled and said, "Madame's words are not right." The woman smiled and asked, "Tell me, why is it wrong?" The maid said with a serious face. Looking up close back then, it was the lady who took us out of the fire pit by herself. Now, in the long run, compared to being an outer disciple of the real-world sect, what's the future? By his side, the young master is the most filial person in the world. How many good luck will we lose in the future? The young master Hongfu Qitian is the proud son of the first class, not talking about the young master's master Jing Qingzhu. Only the teacher Gu Han Xiaosei is an immortal, as well as Lu Daochun, the master of the Liali Pavilion, and his brother Fu Su, and even the great sword Immortal. Which one of them is not a person on the mountain? Any one of them come here. Aquarius Island, let alone the True Realm sect, is to go to the Divine Envoy sect and meet Qi Tianjun, and you should also call each other a friend and then be the guest. Regarding Gu Kan's practice in Baidi City, the only people in the house who knew the truth, except for the women, were their personal servant girls. This is true. It's just that she didn't say everything. Gu Kan's great achievements are only one aspect. They are a few who is not afraid of Gu Kan. Afraid of the demon king of Zhou Xian, they are simply scared to their bones. Strange to say, when Gu Kan grew up, he seemed to have become a Confucian scholar. When he returned to his hometown last time and saw Gu Kan again, even if Gu Kan's expression was gentle, they were even more afraid and became more frightened. If you say that Gu Kan, the disciple of Lu Jimao, the true monarch of Xianxia Island, is a little madman who is likely to provoke murder anytime and anywhere, he is a natural wild cultivator. Then Gu Kan, a young man who was later, seemed to have become a serious and unpredictable person in the city, even standing face to face as if he never knew what Gu Kan was thinking. Gu Kan, who walked out of Zhou Xian, was seriously inconsistent with his age in terms of state, nature and means. Before leaving his hometown, Gu Kan called them together in private. Not only did he have no arrogance and did not have the domineering arrogance of his youth, but he was kind and pleasant. They are even allowed to make a mistake once or twice. But it is required that they need flying swords to spread the letter to Baidi City every year. As for what is written in the letter, they will follow them even if they are just asking for advice on some problems of spiritual practice, there is no problem. Moreover, the expense of the letter from the mountain is up to him, but he just told them not to talk to his mother about this matter. Finally, Gu Kan smiled with them and talked with you some heart-wrenching words. Don't take it seriously. There are 3 chapters of the agreement between the two parties, one of which is to not allow them to fan the flames on the mother's side and turn a small matter into a troublesome matter that needs to alarm the county government or the Dali court. They are not allowed to cause trouble outside, but if someone else provokes them, no matter who the other party is and what background they have, as long as they are in charge, then there is no need to be afraid of things. Gu Kan will take care of it because they are now half of his family. In the end, Gu Kan got up and fisted with them to thank them, saying that it was the food, clothing, housing and transportation of the mother's mother in the future. The woman had heard the sincere words of the maidservant. She was overwhelmed with joy, smiled and twisted a piece of cake from the plate and gently handed it over. My little Chan has been able to endure hardship since he was a child. It's so exaggerated. Yes, the hard days that didn't seem to have an end were actually passed by their mothers day by day. Thinking of this, the woman reddened her eyes and took out a kerchief from her sleeve to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. The 2 maidservants hurriedly comforted a few words. The woman smiled and waved her hand. It's just memorizing bitterness and sweetness. Anyway, the past is gone. In recent years, more people have come to find her to climb relatives. In fact, they are all things that can't be dealt with. Most of them get some money from the house and they are dismissed. In short, they won't let those swindlers get behind the scenes. In order to prevent it from being unpleasant, she chewed her tongue behind her back, saying that she was a person forgetting her roots, and when she had money she turned her face away from her. Before Gu Kan left home last time, she had a conversation with her mother, who was dependent on each other. The woman was gratified, distressed and a bit strange. What's gratifying is that my son has really grown up and is able to provoke the backbone of a family. At the same time, I feel sorry for his son, so young and so sensible. What is strange is that this son is not the same as the son of Ni Ping Ali in his early years and later on Xianxia Island. To be precise, he is very different. During that small talk, Gu Qian and his mother talked about things other than books. At that time, the young man in Confucian shirts also joked that these were all the words he picked up from the ground in the alley at the door of his house. Only when you are poor do you know that the people around you are almost all ghosts. But as long as people get wider, even if they are walking at night, not to mention the people they see, even if they are met on the road. Ghosts are all good ghosts. But people can become ghosts, and ghosts will never become people. My mother, now that we have money in our family, we will not be short of money in the future. Then don't save too much. For the people in the house, the rules must be clear and heavy. There must be no ambiguity, and you can't be happy. He is very good to all outsiders, and if he is in a bad mood he will be angry with the people around him. After a long time, the subordinates who know the context will look down on the mother, so the mother must not handle the housework by himself. Let the rules come. But apart from the family rules, the mother can be more polite to them. There are two kinds of kindness here. One is money, which is the most tangible, and the positions, identities and titles derived from money. The other is virtual. Yes, mother, as the head of the family, you have a few words and even a look in your daily life with them. No one can buy people's hearts. Can only have both, plus rules and family laws. Our home can last long and be stable and stable. Of course, if my mother takes a sigh of breath in her heart, and feels that after too many years of hardship, she has finally worked so hard to get her head out. Why should I be good to them? It makes sense and is willing to treat them sincerely and treat them as human beings. It is best not to treat them as people. Take a 10,000 step back and say that there is a son, even if they are not at home and with their mothers. I definitely don't dare to make a mistake, but I hope my mother will promise one thing. Whoever makes a mistake at home in the future, me or when I ask someone to deal with this person, my mother must not sing the opposite. We know everything what we want, that means a person can live very freely, but we obviously don't know anything. If we want to, we will end up in vain. In the final analysis, how to behave in the world and how to behave are two different things. I feel that if there is a person who can stay harmless for a lifetime, there are only two possibilities. One is a purely good person who never harms others. The other is a truly strong person because they don't need to harm others at all. You can live well. I hope my mother can treat the former kindly and respect the latter. The woman just listened quietly to her son. Gu Qian used a calm tone, saying something she could understand. When her son grows up, he will teach her how to behave. The woman returned to her senses and joked, "Do you two have a match?" The two maidservants smiled at each other and both shook their heads and said no. On the 15th day of the Lunar New Year, rain or shine, the woman would go to the Fengliangshan shrine, where the incense is full of incense, to burn incense and make a wish, bless her son outside, practice smoothly, and all wishes come true. And every time she got to the foot of the mountain, the woman would stop the carriage and hike up the mountain, asking for a sincere heart. The reason why I often go to Fengliang Mountain to burn incense is that apart from being close to the Zhouqing house, the woman has a little bit of her own thoughts. Back in those days, there were so many sad words in Ni Ping Alley. The woman murmured, how happy she would be if she could see what she is today. Letters Lake Xianxia Island. At the entrance of the mountain, a room was locked, and in the next room lights were on as bright as day. It was Zenji and Ma Duyi who came here to watch the night almost every year, no surprises. Ever since Zenji boarded Xianxia Island, he had been lucky. No wonder he missed the old days. Such a Longxing land requires a lot of walking. As for the little girl named Ma Duyi, she is a ghost. She has worn fox fur talisman in these years, and seems to like to buy some rouge gouache often to reward herself. After Lu Jimao folded his hands, he walked to the side of the mountain gate archway, but did not go to sit in the house, just glanced at the spring festival couplets and the word blessing over there. It seems that it was the second-class offering to Xianxia Island, and it was posted by the Guixiu who was born in Zhou Xian Mansion and his concierge Hong Su. Lu Jimao walked straight to the ferry. A breeze blew by and an unexpected guest appeared beside him. Lu Jimao turned his head and smiled. The Lord is so leisurely. The old man at the side of the ferry nodded. Really think about it? Don't think about it anymore? I don't want to think about your visit to Maiyanaji Island next time. Replace this sentence with me. Lu Laoqing, now the sect master of the True Realm sect, is also the first mountain cultivator in Aquarius to rank among the 5 realms. The implication was that if he promised him, Lu Jimao would be the 4th suzerain in the history of Zhenjingzong. Lu Jimao shook his head and said, "High fate, I can't be the leader. I wanted to succeed the suzerain and become the co-master of the book and the lake. It's not that I still know how to be a human being and am almost going to lose my life, and now I'm afraid of it every time I want to come. Sovereign, don't make it difficult for me. Lu Laoqing nodded and said, then I will make another arrangement. Lu Zhimao sighed for no reason. Lu Laoqing smiled and said, people on the mountain don't speak the language of the mountain. Lu Zhimao asked tentatively, is it easy to deal with the new Hujuan? Lu Laoqing said, it's still okay now and it will definitely become more and more difficult in the future. It's just that compared to the past, it's always easier to fight with that young accountant. Lu Zhimao suddenly laughed. I can't imagine that I will go on a night tour with Lu Laoqing on my Yanaji Island, so I don't have to worry about being killed. Lu Laoqing smiled, turned his head and looked at the lake. The islands were like an immovable boat. The waves are scouring the sand and the boat is walking at night. In the early years of Shijianhu, everyone had to pay more attention. The only rule was that there was no rule, and it was not easy to sleep peacefully. On the other side of the mountain gatehouse, the ghost repair horse is far-reaching, bringing the concierge with red cakes and staying vigil together here. Anyway, a house is almost the same on the foot of the mountain, and it is naturally close to each other. Zheng Yi said something about the past, but he couldn't get around the two of them anyway, Mr. Qin earlier and Gukan later. Whenever Zheng Yi mentioned the latter, Ma Di couldn't help but ridicule a few words, and he didn't know that he was afraid of Gukan before. As a result, after the last separation of the year, someone started to cry silently. Was it extremely sad or was he crying with joy? Zheng Yi looked embarrassed. He had never been able to quarrel with Ma Di. He only dared to mumble. Who knew that Gukan's temperament would change drastically? Mr. Qin once said that if we can become the parents of our parents, and we will become the parents of our children in the future, it may be a debt collection or a debt repayment. When Mr. Qin said this, he smiled and said that he is just a debt collector. The room fell silent and there was a slight cracking sound of charcoal in the brazier. Ma Di suddenly exclaimed, why didn't I know that Mr. Qin talked to you about this? Zheng Yi said helplessly, Mr. Qin and I always have time alone. Ma Di complained, when Mr. Qin is alone with me, why don't you talk about it? They were drinking wine, all made from Hong Su's hometown. Zheng Yi said some of Mr. Chen's gossip about drinking, saying that there are two things in life that are the most chewy. They reunited with old friends after a long time, half drunk after drinking and turned around. Judging from his life, tea drinking is sweet. Ma Yuanzi's face was a bit reluctant and he said, Qin Pingan is a little knowledgeable. People who have eaten ink are different. Hong Su blinked and smiled. Why don't you call Master Qin? Mianji sighed. I have agreed to write a book for me and write a good story about me and His Royal Highness the Princess. However, I was so slow that I didn't know whether the beginning of the article was finished with a few thousand words. Ma Di turned his head and looked at Hong Su, who only dared to shook his head quietly, indicating that this was not the case at all. Zheng Yi thought of a woman for no reason. After so many years she would still miss her a lot. Probably the so-called worry is to hang a portrait of a beloved woman in my heart and I never forget it. Ma Di asked casually. Then Mr. Qin said that he can be married in this life. What is it? Zheng Yi smiled and nodded and gave an answer. It's a return. On the top floor corridor of the tallest building in the town Demon Tower, the Taoist Chunyang with his sword on his back, along with that Xiaomo and Qing, saw a vision almost at the same time. With the building at their feet as the center of the circle, the figures of the gods of mountains and rivers and monks appeared one after another in the sky. They turned their backs to the top corridor and arranged several people in sequence, as if they had opened dozens of mirrors at the same time. It's an unprecedented event. The visitors' Patriarch Hall discusses matters with the same mind, only discussing one thing and doing only one thing. Chong the Dan River water god, Li Jin got 2 gold scrolls, left the bookstore, returned to the water mansion, bathed and changed clothes, put on a Jiangshui Jingshan official robe, lit a scent of water, paid homage to Tongyi's Hao in the south and raised his heart. Read the wish silently in my heart, may the dead rest in peace and the living will be safe. The embroidered river god, a righteous of river water with a green snake entwining his arms, respects the fragrance in all, and may the broken mountains and rivers of Tongyi's Hao be restored to integrity, and the heroes of the battlefield in Izhou will be reincarnated. Yuya River, the goddess of water Yi Qingzhu, lit a stick of water scent and muttered words. Adults don't remember the villains. I would like to do my best for Tonggishao and Wuxia a peaceful and prosperous territory. The lotus root-blessed land in the Luopa mountain, headed by Shui Jiao Hongxia, led the rivers and water gods in the blessed land, each lit a stick of fragrance. The incense curled up into the air and suddenly all swayed to the south. Beiju Luzhou Jidu, the old Jidu middle shrine is water, and now Longting Ho Li Yuan, a black-robed boy with a pair of golden eyes in Dajuha's mansion, said aloud his wish that Tonggishao, one the weather is smooth in the land of the continent. Dayuan Dynasty Zhou Xian Department Yunshao Palace. National teacher Yang Qinggan, the old man held a tail inscribed with the word Fengshen in his hand, and lit the fragrance of 3 sticks. Next to the old real man, was the Yupu-level monk with the Daoist name, Tuning Mud. Yang Hojua looked respectful, holding incense in both hands with the ancestors of the Yang family facing the south. The skeletal beach swayed the river, and Shui Yuanxing Hebo was no longer in the costume of the old boat in a boat, but appeared golden, wearing a robes and lighting the fragrance of water. Dadu Lingyuan Gong Shen Lin, the water of the old Nanchuan water hall. She stands tall like a hibiscus in the distant mountains, standing at the gate of the government with her back facing the Dio Palace plaque. Shen Lin faces the south, wishing Tonggishao Shi and Yanfeng. In the territory of Yinping, the Songyun Lake Shuijun Yinho, who leads 1 lake, 3 rivers and 2 canals, wears a purple robe, across a treasure bottle island, holds incense in both hands, pays homage to Tonggishao, wishes the land of Tonggishao is rejuvenated and Vientiane is new. On the dense snow peak of Xiandu Mountain, Yu Angshan from Moxiandu, after lighting the incense, hopes that the Tonggishao surname will be safe and sound. The old Chiu Du from the Jilin River, the old official of the Dadu Dragon Palace, a teacher who specializes in teaching the etiquette and rules of the dragons and grandchildren, holds the incense and whispers, wishing Tonggishao a new year. Haiyan Huqing, the world is peaceful, hope that the new Tonggishao people will be taught by the young and the old. The Daquan dynasty buried the river in the Bio Palace, the of water Liuro. She hoped that the Tonggishao would not fight in the future, and the common people would be able to eat and wear warmth, and the gods and lords on the mountain should be less pretentious and be more reasonable. Howren, the co-master of land and water transportation in the world, Mrs. Tundun of the road number Qingzhong, prays that the wind of Tonggishao will be beautiful and she will know the etiquette. Li Yeho, the lord of the South China Sea, lit incense, hoping that Tonggish's land, mountains and rivers would meet in spring, and the people would live and work in peace and contentment. The former sovereign of the Yulong sect and the current patriarch of the ruler, the female Shiyun, made a wish and hoped that all the countries in Tonggishao would have a good reputation, and that everyone would have enough food and clothing and the people would be happy. According to legend, it was the Daoist alchemy furnace, the woman in the small wine shop, the old throne, the big demon, and brought the newly acquired disciples to the Chioha Paganzhou, together to pick up the fragrance of water, pray for Tonggishao and resign. The old welcomes the new, the seasons of wind and rain, the harvest of grains and the tranquility of the community. When the Aquarius Island crosses the Changchun Ho, the of water, poplar flower ignites the fragrance of water, and he silently reads that everything is abundant and the people are loyal and filial. Lord Qinhu of Nantang Lake, burn incense and pray and be sincere in his heart. May that Tonggish's grains be ripe and Rang Rang will be full of homes. Tiaobo River has been renamed and promoted to Laoyu Lake. Sun Wenqian has been recorded at the Changchun Hofu and Dei Court and officially promoted to Yidi Hujin. After fasting, Sun Wenqian lights a scent of water and pays homage. Tonggishao mountains and rivers, may the vast mountains and rivers in the southeast boundary of the world stay away from disasters and be prosperous and healthy. In addition, there are still Uncle Chidu Lily from Aquarius Island, and Chao Yong as the old Qiantang. Within the territory of Huang Ting, the founder of Xiang Mansion, Wu Yi, the eldest daughter of the old Jiao. The old iron coupons are the of river water high brewing. The Baihu River water god Empress Xiao Luan appeared one by one. The sky over the Aquarius Island is like Bai Yujing. In those days, Cui Yang borrowed the 2 sage characters of mountain and water with others. The word mountain is the natal word for the great sacrifice of Liji Shuegong. Just as Qin Pingon guessed, the word water borrowed by brother Cui Yang is of course the old man who wrote a piece of Wen Tian in Shijianhu. The 4 articles of Mountain Ghost, Shijiang, East Lord, and Calling the Soul were given to Wen Sheng. This old gentleman does not belong to the Confucian Temple Orthodox context and belongs to self-reliance. Therefore, this old master's stick heart fragrance will be the most effective stick of water fragrance in the world. It seems that the old gentleman is responsible for closing the matter of the water gods of all continents lighting incense. The scholar again invited all the monarchs to dream, and borrowed from the monarch one's Zhou Xian. You think the 6 classics of God, the more you blaspheme the sea, the more you think about the mountains, and I am the host. Beiyue of Aquarius Island, Weibo of Piyun Mountain, Zhongyue Mountain Jun Jinqing, Nanyue female mountain monarch Fan Junmao, each lit a mountain incense to pray for Tongyi's Hao and eliminate disasters. Zhongtu Shenzhou the Zhengxian pavilion in the Daong dynasty. Immortal Yunya and Daoist companion Wei Zi. In a broken blessed land full of savages and gregarious ghosts, they share the same incense to pay homage to Tongyi's Hao. In the Sui mountain of the Middle Earth, the named Dejiao, the mountain monarch traveled around, showing a majestic statue of the golden body, facing the southeast direction of the awe-inspiring world, holding incense in both hands. Deiyue Jushu Mountain is one of the 2 princely prince mountains. The Niaozhi Mountain is a real person on land, and Taoist priests conferred the emperor. The Laoshan god Gong Xinzhou of Shangtou Mountain, Aquarius Island. Dai Yunling mountain goddess flooded the watershed mountain Weiwei, leading 2 mountain temples to accompany the goddess, facing the south and worshipping incense together. The last person who seemed to be the mountain fragrance for the heroes of the mountains in the world, turned out to be the pure young Taoist whose real body was in Aquarius, Lu Yan. On the corridor on the top floor of the Jinyao building, Xiaomao and Qingtong all thanked the pure young Taoist beside him, and Lu Yan smiled and returned the gift. The incense curls and the stars are dotted. The trickling water converges into rivers. The accumulation of soil into mountains, the wind and rain are prosperous. The most sacred master looked at the gradually disappearing figures, stroked his beard and smiled. Let's turn around and let the Confucian temple side record them and this matter in the book. Qin Pingon is not good to say anything about this. The holy master asked, do you still have a lot of merit in your hand? Qin Pingon nodded, and roughly estimated that about 30% remained. The thunder is loud and the rain can't be said to be small. To be honest, it is already a big weather, and it has completely solved Tongyi's urgent needs. This sounds like ordinary, in fact it is not easy, just like you are pure Takeo. He changed his sigh of anger. It wasn't a move to hang himself with medicine, but he was completely alive. The most sage master turned his head to look at Qin Pingon and said with a smile, but if you end it with this, once you think about it once in the future, you will inevitably regret it once after all. Qin Pingon was puzzled. What else could he do? Is it possible that the most sage master is willing to help match the bridge and gift the remaining 3 virtues to those who are not familiar with the landscape gods? The holy master smiled. I want to make a difference. As soon as I don't want to intervene in any specific affairs now, otherwise, it is definitely not a good thing for Howren. Besides, my face is so worthless and needs to be. Cheeky, go out in person, knock on the door of your family and ask them if they want to do this business with you? How proper. Qin Pingon became more and more confused and had to wait for the following. The most sage master didn't sell the gates either and said with a smile, it's not that the family doesn't enter the house. Although the seniors of your Wuxia lineage have different congenital dispositions, there are always a few things that will be particularly sensitive. At first it was Qi Jingchun who entrusted Bai Yi. Then the people on the Great Wall of Jianqi entrusted Qin Qingdu, and then Jun Qian entrusted Jing Xing Shiping before going to the Qingming world. Finally it was Cui Huang. He didn't say anything, but what he meant, the Confucian temple knows all about it. In fact, it's the same thing, giving their Confucian temple merits to the younger brother for disposal. The most sage master patted the young man on the shoulder. So, apart from being given hope, it is something that makes people feel that you will not be alone. Then walking with others in the great road, it must be the same. Not only these brothers but also believe that their husbands' close disciples, their little brothers, can provoke the future leader of the Wuxia line, and will protect the disciples of his husband. It is also a kind of spirit among the 5 brothers and sisters who have a direct lineage of Wuxia, who does not need to communicate with each other. Maybe we have all been disappointed in this world, but we are all willing to place hope in this world.